Tonight, my wife confessed she cheated on me 2 years ago. She has no idea I've been hiding my own affair with her billionaire business partner for 3. We're in our brownstone living room, 12 years of marriage on the shelves around us, when she says, "I need to tell you something. Something that would hurt." I didn't know she was describing the next 3 weeks of my life. The way she was sitting, leaning forward, hands clasped, I knew before she spoke. You don't rehearse good news. I slept with someone. 2 years ago. Chicago. 3 sentences. 8 words. My hand reached for the glass and stopped. Because if I drank, I might speak. And if I spoke, I'd have to tell her about Chicago. No, not her Chicago. Mine. We sit there in the house we built, with 12 years of marriage on the shelves, in the frames, in every object we'd chosen together. And I realized I couldn't forgive her. Not because she'd betrayed me, because I'd done the same thing with her billionaire business partner, and I'd never told her. They say the truth will set you free. They never mention what it costs. In the next 2 hours, you'll witness what happens when 2 people finally stop lying to each other and discover that the truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes, it just makes the cage visible. Welcome to American Billionaire Tales. I didn't sleep. Not an hour, not a minute. I sat in my study until the amber lamps burned out and gray December light crept through the windows like an accusation. The whiskey glass from the living room was still on my desk, still full. I couldn't drink it last night. Couldn't drink it now. Drinking would mean swallowing, and swallowing would mean the words might come up. Chicago, 3 years ago. Naomi. I had the laptop open. The photo on screen, the one I should have deleted 1,000 times and never could. The Wealth Management Summit 2021, conference badge still visible on my lapel. And next to me, shoulder touching mine, smiling at someone's phone camera, Naomi Chen. We looked happy. We looked like colleagues. We looked like 2 people who hadn't spent the previous night in her hotel room, wrapped in sheets that smelled like her perfume and my shame. I heard footsteps on the stairs. The laptop closed so fast my coffee cup rattled. By the time Penny appeared in the study doorway, I was staring at a blank screen like a man reviewing spreadsheets at 6 in the morning. Just another workaholic husband. Nothing to see. She looked different. That was the first thing I noticed. The tension that had lived in her shoulders for months, years maybe, was gone. Her face had softened overnight. Her dark eyes, usually sharp with the calculations of a woman running a $100 million company, were almost peaceful. She had slept, really slept, for the first time in as long as I could remember. The confession had worked. For her. "You've been up all night," she said. Not a question. She crossed the study in her cream silk robe, her bare feet silent on the Persian rug I'd bought her for our 10th anniversary. Her dark chestnut hair was loose, falling past her shoulders, and she looked younger in the morning light. Softer. The woman I'd married, briefly visible through the armor of the woman she'd become. She put her hand on my shoulder. I flinched. It was involuntary, the kind of reaction you can't fake or hide. My whole body jerked away from her touch like she'd pressed a hot iron to my skin. And I saw it register on her face. The confusion, the hurt, and then, worse, the understanding. "I know," she said quietly. "I know you're still processing. Dr. Webb said you might need time." Dr. Webb. There was that name again. "Take whatever time you need." Penny's hand found my shoulder again, gentler this time. I forced myself not to flinch, forced myself to sit still while her fingers traced the tension in my neck. "I'm just grateful you didn't leave last night, that you're willing to try." I should have told her then. The words were right there, lined up like soldiers waiting for the order to march. "Penny, I need to tell you something too. Something that will change everything you just said." But I looked at her face, that peaceful, unburdened face, and I thought about what my confession would do to it. The peace would shatter. The gratitude would curdle into fury. And she would look at me the way I'd been looking at her since she said the word Chicago. So instead, I said, "I just need coffee." The first lie of the morning. There would be more. She smiled, relieved, and went to make breakfast while I sat in my study, staring at the laptop that held the evidence of everything I was hiding. The conference photo was still there. 3 years of silence, saved as a JPEG I couldn't delete. Penny hummed something from the kitchen, a song we'd danced to at our wedding. She hadn't hummed in months. I closed my eyes and listened to my wife's happiness, knowing that if she ever learned the truth, that humming would stop forever. Coffee cups, newspaper rustling, the choreography of a marriage. Breakfast was a performance. Penny made eggs the way I like them, over easy, slightly runny, and set my coffee exactly where I always reach for it. She was trying. I could see it in every movement, the careful placement of the cream pitcher, the way she folded the Times to the business section before setting it beside my plate. She was trying to show me that nothing had to change, that we could still be us. But I couldn't taste the eggs, couldn't focus on the headlines. All I could hear was her voice from last night, playing on loop in my skull. "I slept with someone 2 years ago. Chicago." And underneath that, another voice, my own. 3 years ago. Penny didn't even call today. My husband filed for divorce last month. The hotel room door closing. "Graham?" I looked up. Penny was watching me, her dark eyes searching. "You haven't said anything in 20 minutes. What do you want me to say?" She flinched at my tone. I'd meant to keep it level, the wounded husband processing with dignity, but something had slipped, something colder. She set down her fork. Her wedding ring caught the light. Platinum, emerald-cut diamond. The ring I'd designed because I knew she hated anything ostentatious. "I want to understand what you're feeling. Dr. Webb says that communication is—" "Dr. Webb." The name landed between us like a dropped glass. "Yes." Penny's chin lifted slightly. The tell I knew meant she was preparing to defend something. "My therapist. I mentioned her." "You mentioned that she told you to do this." I pushed my plate aside. "She told you to confess." "She helped me understand that secrets are poison, Graham. That carrying something like this alone was destroying me, and destroying us." "And did she also tell you what your honesty would do to me?" Penny didn't answer. She didn't have to. I could see it in her face, the flicker of something that might have been doubt, quickly suppressed. Her fingers went to her wedding ring, twisting it the way she did when she was processing something difficult. "She said you'd be hurt, that your reaction would be yours to manage, and mine was to tell the truth. But honesty heals, Graham. In the long run, honesty heals the person telling the truth." I pushed back from the table. "I'm not sure it does much for the person hearing it." I walked out of the kitchen before she could respond. Walked through the brownstone we'd built together, past the living room where she'd confessed, past the wedding photo that now felt like evidence. and up the stairs to her home office. I told myself I was looking for something. I wasn't sure what. Evidence of the affair, maybe? Details she hadn't shared? The name of the man, the circumstances, the hotel room, the position. I was looking for ammunition. I understand that now. Every detail I could gather about her betrayal was another brick in the wall I was building between myself and my own guilt. The more I could focus on what she'd done, the less I'd have to face what I'd done. The mind protects itself with such elegant cruelty. Her office was neat, organized, the desk of a CFO who ran a $100 million company with precision. Leather-bound planner, laptop in its dock, a small photo of us from our honeymoon in Positano, and beside the keyboard, a moleskin notebook I'd never seen before. I shouldn't have opened it. But the cover said Therapy Journal in Penny's handwriting, and my hands were moving before my better judgment could stop them. Dr. Webb's philosophy spilled across the pages in Penny's careful script. Notes from sessions, reflections, and then the lines that burned. Caroline says that secrets corrode from within, that my guilt is slowly poisoning the marriage I'm trying to protect. She reminded me, his reaction is his responsibility, not mine. I cannot control how he receives the truth. I can only control whether I tell it. His reaction is his responsibility. I read it again, and I felt something crystallize in my chest, cold, hard, righteous. Dr. Caroline Webb had given my wife permission to detonate our marriage and walk away clean, to unload 2 years of guilt onto me and call it healing, to dump her burden and make me carry it instead. And she'd told Penny that whatever happened next, my pain, my devastation, my inability to process this betrayal, was my responsibility. I closed the journal, put it back exactly where I'd found it, and went downstairs where Penny was, loading the dishwasher with the mechanical movements of a woman waiting for her husband to return. "I'm going to the office," I said. My voice was flat, controlled. "I have the Brennan review tomorrow." She turned, hopeful. "Will you be home for dinner? I thought maybe we could talk more. Really talk." "I'll try." Another lie. They were coming easier now. I left for work with Dr. Webb's words burning in my mind. His reaction is his responsibility. As if confession were an act of courage instead of what it really was, a transfer of weight. She'd carried her secret for 2 years. Now it was my turn. And she got to feel better while I felt... What did I feel? I felt guilty, and I hated her for making me feel it. The atmosphere of reconciliation attempt. 3 days passed. 3 days of careful choreography. Separate bathrooms, staggered departures, the strategic geography of 2 people sharing a home they could no longer share. Penny gave me space. I accepted it, like a wound accepting gauze. But on the 3rd night, she tried. Dinner at home. Candles on the dining table we'd bought in Milan. A bottle of the 2015 Barolo we'd been saving for a special occasion. The occasion, I suppose, was survival. "I thought we could talk," she said, settling into the chair across from me. She'd worn the green cashmere dress I'd always loved, the one that made her dark eyes seem warmer. Her chestnut hair was down, soft around her face. She looked like the woman I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago at that hedge fund conference, the brilliant analyst who'd argued me into a corner about emerging market risk and then agreed to dinner. She was trying so hard, and I hated her for it. Okay. I poured the wine, watched the ruby liquid catch the candlelight. "Let's talk." "I want to answer any questions you have," Penny said. Her voice was steady, but her fingers had found her wedding ring again, twisting, twisting. Dr. Webb says that transparency after disclosure helps rebuild trust, that if you have questions, I should answer them, honestly. Dr. Webb says a lot of things. Penny's jaw tightened. I'd hit a nerve. Good. Ask me anything, she said. Whatever you need to know. I should have said, I don't need to know anything. I need you to know something. About me. About what I did. Instead, I said, who was he? Graham, you said it was one night, one time, Chicago, 2 years ago. I set down my glass. Who was he? She exhaled slowly. I watched her calculate. How much truth, which details, what would help and what would make it worse. His name was David. David something. I genuinely don't remember his last name. We met at the Biotech Leadership Summit. He was a venture partner from Austin. How did it start? Graham, how did it start, Penny? She looked down at her wine, her reflection in the dark liquid fractured by candlelight. It was the third night of the conference. I was exhausted. I missed home, but I didn't miss... She stopped. Didn't miss what? I didn't miss us. And I hated myself for feeling that. The words landed. I felt them. And I pushed past them because I couldn't afford to feel them, not really. Not when feeling them would mean understanding, and understanding would mean forgiving. And forgiving would mean facing the truth, that I had done the same thing, that her loneliness and mine were mirror images. What happened next? We had drinks at the hotel bar. He listened. He was present, in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. Penny's eyes were wet now. We went to his room, and it happened. Once, yes. I left before sunrise. I flew home the next day. I never spoke to him again. I should have stopped there. A rational man would have stopped. But rationality had left me the moment she said Chicago, and all that remained was this grinding need to know every detail, not for closure, but for weaponry. What did he look like? Graham, please. What did he look like? Tall, brown hair, glasses. I barely remember. It was 2 years ago, and I was drunk and lonely, and I made a mistake. And you've been carrying it ever since. Yes. Penny's voice was barely a whisper. Every day. Every time I looked at you. Every time you told me you loved me, and I couldn't say it back without feeling like a fraud. Something in her tone cut through my interrogation. I heard her, really heard her, for just a moment. The weight she'd carried. The guilt that had corroded her from within. Just like mine. But I couldn't let myself feel it, because if I felt her pain, I'd have to acknowledge my own, and if I acknowledged my own, you should have told me sooner. My voice came out harder than I intended, colder. 2 years, Penny. You let me believe we were something we weren't for 2 years. I know. She wiped her eyes with her napkin. I know, and I'm sorry. That's why I told you now, because I couldn't live with the lie anymore. Couldn't live with the lie. I've lived with mine for 3 years. But it does feel... Penny started, then stopped. Her eyes found mine across the table. Those dark, perceptive eyes that had seen through merger proposals and hostile takeovers and every kind of corporate deception. It feels like what? I prompted, already defensive. It feels like you're not looking for answers, Graham. It feels like you're looking for permission. Permission for what? Permission to hate me. The observation landed in the center of my chest like a surgeon's scalpel, precise, devastating, uncomfortably close to the truth. I wasn't looking for closure. I was looking for ammunition. Every detail of her affair was another brick in the wall between myself and my guilt. The more time I spent prosecuting her, the less time I'd have to face the defendant in my own conscience. But I couldn't admit that. Admitting it would require confession, and confession was exactly what I was avoiding. "I'm not looking for permission to hate you," I said. The lie tasted like ash. "I'm trying to understand." "Are you?" Penny's voice was sad, not angry, sad. "Because it feels like you're building a case. Like I'm on trial and you're the prosecutor." "I'm just trying to process," I said. "You had 2 years to prepare for this conversation. I've had 3 days." She nodded slowly, accepting the deflection, giving me grace I didn't deserve. "I know, I'm sorry. Take whatever time you need." I watched her clear the dishes, watched her move through the kitchen with the mechanical precision of someone who's built a career on controlling every variable. And I thought about how thoroughly I was failing her. Not as a husband wronged, but as a husband lying. She had told me her worst truth. I was hiding mine. The domestic rituals that continue even when everything breaks. The 2015 Barolo sat mostly untouched on the table, a special occasion wine for an occasion that was anything but. I'd asked her every question except the one that mattered. "Do you want to know my secret, too?" The office was supposed to be the one place I could breathe. Ashford and Price Wealth Management, 47th floor of a midtown glass tower. My name on the door, literally. Partner for 12 years, managing director for 8. I'd built this practice client by client, handshake by handshake. From a 2-man operation in a sublet office to a firm managing over $2 billion in assets. This was where Graham Ashford was in control, where nothing happened without my approval, where I could be the man I'd always believed myself to be, competent, reliable, ethical. Ethical. The word tasted like copper in my mouth as I stepped off the elevator. "Good morning, Mr. Ashford." My assistant, Elena, appeared at my elbow with a tablet and a concerned expression. "The Brennan Quarterly Review is tomorrow at 2. I've sent the portfolio analysis to your inbox. Also, Mr. Price asked to see you when you arrived." "Marcus?" I stopped mid-stride. "About what?" "He didn't say. Just said it was important." Marcus Price didn't summon partners for casual conversations. He was 60, silver-haired, built like a man who'd played rugby at Princeton and never entirely stopped. He'd founded this firm before I was out of business school, and he still ran it with the benevolent authority of a patriarch who could turn ruthless the moment you threatened his legacy. I found him in his corner office, standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over Manhattan's steel and glass canyon. The view cost approximately $8 million in annual rent. Marcus believed in paying for perspective. "Graham," he didn't turn around. "Close the door." I closed it, waited. The silence stretched until it became a statement. "I've known you 15 years, Marcus said finally. He turned, his blue eyes, shrewd and assessing, fixed on my face with the precision of a surgeon looking for a tumor. "You've been off for a week, distracted. Elena says you've missed 2 calls from the Brennan family office. That's not like you." "I've had some personal matters. I'm handling it." "Personal matters." Marcus walked to his desk, mahogany, antique, a gift from a Saudi prince he'd made very wealthy. He sat down heavily. "You mean Penelope? What do you know about Penny?" "Nothing specific." He gestured for me to sit. I remained standing. "But I know what a man looks like when his marriage is falling apart. I've been through it myself. Twice." I didn't sit, didn't speak. The weight of what he might know, what anyone might know, pressed against my chest like a physical force. The Brennans are old money, Graham. Marcus leaned forward, fingers steepled. Fourth generation, the kind of family that remembers every slight, every scandal, every whisper. Lydia Brennan specifically chose us because she valued discretion, stability. She's trusting you with $500 million of her family's legacy. I'm aware. Are you? His voice sharpened. Because if she smells instability, personal drama, marital dysfunction, anything that makes her question your judgment, she will pull that account so fast you'll feel the wind burn. The quarterly review is tomorrow, Marcus continued. The full family office, Lydia, her sons, their legal counsel. You need to be present, focused. Whatever's happening at home, you leave it at home. I understand. Do you? He stood again, walked around the desk until he was close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something expensive, old world, the scent of money that predated mine by 2 generations. Because Brennan Dynamics is also in that review. Your wife's company. The company her CFO role is tied to. The company where your personal and professional lives intersect in ways that make me very uncomfortable right now. I hadn't thought about that. Brennan Dynamics, Penny's company. And Naomi Chen was COO. Every quarterly review, every client meeting, every portfolio discussion, Naomi would be there, across the table, looking at me with those dark eyes that remembered everything we'd promised to forget. Handle it, Graham. Marcus's voice had the finality of a verdict. Fix your marriage or end it. I don't care which. But do it quietly and do it fast. Because if your personal life starts bleeding into this firm's professional reputation, I will reassign the Brennan account to someone who can keep their house in order. I nodded, once, and left his office with the weight of $500 million pressing down on shoulders already carrying 3 years of secrets. Elena was waiting outside. Mr. Ashford, is everything all right? Fine. Another lie. Just fine. The dinner was Penny's idea. Brennan Dynamics had closed a major acquisition. The quarterly numbers were exceptional, and despite everything happening between us, she was still CFO of a company that demanded celebration. Just a small gathering, she'd said that morning, her dark eyes hopeful. The executive team, a few board members. It'll be good for us to be seen together. Normal. Normal. As if that word still meant anything. I stood in the brownstone living room, watching our home transform into a stage set. Caterers moving through the kitchen, fresh flowers on every surface. The good china, the real silver, the crystal glasses we'd received as wedding presents 12 years ago. And I knew who was coming. The guests arrived in a careful sequence. Brennan board members, investment partners, the social ecosystem of Manhattan wealth. I shook hands, accepted congratulations, performed the role of supportive husband with the mechanical precision of a man who'd forgotten how to feel. And then she walked in. Naomi Chen. She was wearing black, a fitted cocktail dress that made her look like a shadow given form. Her long, dark hair was swept over one shoulder, and when she moved through the room, heads turned. They always did. 39, COO of Brennan Dynamics, Penny's business partner and closest friend, and the woman I'd spent one night with 3 years ago, the night I'd been trying to forget, the night that made me exactly like my father. Graham? Naomi's voice was professional, warm, the voice of a colleague greeting a friend's husband. Good to see you. Naomi? I watched her register my discomfort, watched her eyes flicker with something, warning maybe, or shared fear. We hadn't been alone in the same room since Chicago. We'd managed it with surgical precision. Always other people present, always professional distance, always the unspoken agreement that what happened had never happened. But tonight, the distance felt impossible. The dinner proceeded in a blur. I sat at the head of the table, Penny's idea, putting the supportive husband in position of authority. Penny sat at the other end, and Naomi sat in the middle, directly across from where I had to look. I tried not to watch her, tried to focus on the board member to my left, who was explaining something about market volatility. But my eyes kept drifting, catching on the way Naomi's fingers wrapped around her wine glass, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, the way she hadn't looked at me once in 45 minutes. She's avoiding me, like I'm avoiding her, like we're both terrified that one wrong glance will expose everything. And then she looked. It lasted maybe 1 second, maybe 2. Her dark eyes found mine across the table, over the candles and crystal, through the conversation and careful performance. And in that second, I saw everything. The Chicago hotel room, the morning we'd agreed to never speak of it, the 3 years of pretending it hadn't changed us. I saw her guilt, her fear, her suppressed longing. And I saw that she saw mine. We both looked away, simultaneously, like magnets that had gotten too close and remembered why they were kept apart. "Graham," Penny's voice from the other end of the table. I turned to find her watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You've barely spoken to Naomi all night." Her tone was light, curious, but her eyes, those dark, perceptive eyes that missed nothing in boardrooms, were studying me. "Is everything okay?" "Fine." The word came too fast. "Just tired, long week." Penny nodded slowly, accepting the explanation, but something in her expression shifted, filed something away for later examination. She noticed. She doesn't know what she noticed, but she noticed. The dinner ended. Guests departed with air kisses and promises to meet again. I shook hands and smiled and played the role until my face ached from the performance. And when Naomi left, always last, the pause at the door just a beat too long, she squeezed Penny's hand and said, "Thank you for a wonderful evening." Then her eyes found mine, one more time. "Good night, Graham." Good night. I watched the door close behind her, watched Penny begin directing the caterers, watched my own reflection in the darkened windows, a man who was running out of places to hide. Later, in bed, Penny lay beside me in the darkness, not touching, not speaking, just present. "That glance," she said finally. My whole body went still. "What glance?" "Between you and Naomi, during dinner." She turned on her side to face me. I could see the outline of her profile in the ambient city light. "I've never seen you look at someone like that." "Like what?" "I don't know." She was quiet for a long moment. "Like you were afraid of her. Or she was afraid of you. Or both." "It's nothing," I said. "Work stress. The Brennan review is tomorrow. I've been distracted." A sound that might have been acceptance, or might have been doubt, filed away. She turned onto her back, stared at the ceiling. "I love you, Graham." I should have said it back, but the words stuck in my throat, trapped behind all the other words I couldn't say. "I know." The silence between us filled with everything unspoken. Her confession, my secret, the glance she'd noticed and couldn't interpret. Eventually, her breathing deepened. She fell asleep. I lay awake until dawn. 2 in the morning. The Brennan review was in 12 hours. I should have been sleeping, preparing, being the reliable, unflappable partner Marcus expected at that conference table. Instead, I was standing in my study, staring at the locked drawer of my desk. Penny was asleep upstairs. The dinner party had exhausted her, the performance of normalcy, the weight of my strange distance, the glance she'd noticed but couldn't decode. She'd fallen asleep mid-sentence, her body finally surrendering to the stress of the past week. I envied her that surrender. The drawer key was in my wallet, hidden behind my driver's license. I'd kept it there for 3 years, close enough to feel guilty about, far enough to pretend it didn't exist. I opened the drawer. Inside, documents, quarterly reports, the administrative detritus of a career in wealth management. And beneath all of it, in a manila folder I'd labeled personal correspondence, as if naming it something boring would make it less damning, the conference program. Wealth Management Summit, Chicago, 2021. I pulled it out. My hands were steady, which surprised me. 3 years of hiding this, and my hands were steady. The program fell open to the page I'd dog-eared, the page with the photo. There we were, Graham Ashford and Naomi Chen, standing in the hotel ballroom after the closing reception. Someone's phone camera had caught us mid-laugh, our shoulders touching, our faces tilted toward each other with the easy intimacy of two people who'd already decided what was going to happen. I remembered the exact moment. Third night of the conference. I'd had too much bourbon. Naomi had had too much of whatever kept her from remembering that her divorce was only a month old, and Penny hadn't called. That was what I told myself at the time. That was the justification I constructed, brick by brick, until it felt almost like truth. Penny hadn't called in 3 days. She was too busy, too important. The conference was lonely, and Naomi was there, and she understood what it felt like to be second place in your own marriage. The Langham, Chicago, November 2021. Ice in glasses, the low hum of expensive anonymity. Graham's voice, younger, slightly drunk. She didn't even call today. Naomi sat across from me at the hotel bar, her dark eyes catching the amber light. She was beautiful. I'd always known that in an abstract way, the way you notice that a colleague has nice eyes or a good smile. But that night, she wasn't abstract. She was present. "Marcus filed last month," she said, twirling her whiskey. 30 days and everything I built with him just dissolved. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We were strangers living in the same house. At least now we can be strangers in different ones." I should have gone to bed then. Should have finished my drink, said goodnight, walked to my room alone. But Penny hadn't called, and Naomi was looking at me like I was the first person who'd really seen her in months. "One more?" I asked. She nodded. The elevator was empty. We stood on opposite sides, professional distance, appropriate behavior. But somewhere between the 7th floor and the 14th, the distance collapsed. I don't remember who moved first. It doesn't matter. What matters is the kiss. Desperate, starving, two lonely people crashing into each other like shipwrecks. Her room, 1847. I remember the number because I repeated it to myself the whole walk down the hallway, like memorizing a password to a door I was about to unlock. The door closed behind us. And for one night, I was exactly what I'd sworn I'd never be. My father. The man who destroyed my mother. The man who came home smelling like other women's perfume while Mom pretended not to notice. The man who broke every promise at the altar while keeping the ring on his finger like a sick joke. I became him that night, and I've been living with that knowledge for 3 years. I stared at the photo. My own face, younger by 3 years, smiling like a man who didn't know what he was about to do. Naomi's face, tilted toward mine, trusting. We'd agreed never to speak of it. The morning after, we'd sat in her room with cold coffee and colder shame, and we'd made a pact. This never happened. We were colleagues, friends of a sort, nothing more. And for 3 years that pact had held. But now Penny had confessed. Now I was playing the victim. Now I was interrogating her for details of an affair that was pale compared to mine. She'd slept with a stranger, once, a man she'd never see again. I'd slept with her business partner, her closest friend, a woman I saw at every dinner party, every quarterly review, every Brennan Dynamics board meeting. I'd slept with someone who was still in our lives, still at our dinner table, still looking at me with eyes that held 3 years of buried feeling. I should tell her. The thought rose up like bile. I should go upstairs right now, wake Penny, and say the words, "You told me your truth. Here's mine. 3 years ago, Chicago, Naomi. I'm no different than you. I'm worse." But if I told her, I would lose the moral high ground I'd been clinging to like a life raft. I would become the hypocrite I already was, but visible. She would look at me the way I'd been looking at her, with that mixture of hurt and betrayal and shattered trust. And she would know I'd been hiding it. Not for days, like she had. For 3 years. The photo stared back at me. 2 people who'd made a mistake they couldn't unmake. I put the photo back in the folder back in the drawer locked, the key hidden. And I went upstairs to the bedroom where my wife slept, her face peaceful with the relief of her confession, her conscience finally clear. I lay down beside her, and I kept my secret. Morning brownstone, coffee, movement, the routines that continue even when everything is broken. The next morning, Penny was waiting for me in the kitchen. She'd made coffee, set out my cup in the exact spot I always reach for it, the small gestures of a marriage she was desperately trying to save. "The Brennan review is today," she said, watching me from the island. Her dark eyes were hopeful, nervous, searching my face for some sign of the man she'd married. "I know things have been difficult, but I wanted you to know I believe in us, in what we can rebuild." I looked at her, really looked, at the woman who'd carried her secret for 2 years before confessing, at the CFO who ran a $100 million company and still made my coffee every morning, at the wife who'd told me her worst truth and was waiting, hoping, for forgiveness. And I thought about the photo in my locked drawer, the night I'd never told her about, the woman I'd slept with who was also her business partner, her friend, the person she trusted second most in her professional life. Tell her now. Say, "Penny, I need to tell you something too, something that will change everything you just said." I crossed the kitchen, took her face in my hands, watched her eyes fill with tears at the tenderness of the gesture, the first tenderness I'd shown her since her confession. "I'm trying," I said. "I'm trying to forgive you. I just need time." Her face crumpled with relief. Tears spilled down her cheeks, catching on my thumbs. She pulled me close, burying her face in my chest, and I felt her shake with the force of gratitude she didn't know was misplaced. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you. I know I don't deserve your patience, but I swear, Graham, I'll spend the rest of my life earning it." I held her, and I said nothing. The lie was active now. Not a lie of omission. I'd been living that for 3 years. This was worse. This was looking into the eyes of a woman who'd just been brave enough to tell me her worst truth, and choosing to let her believe she was the only one who'd broken our vows. I'm trying to forgive you. How could I forgive her when I hadn't even confessed? But I couldn't tell her. Not now. Maybe not ever. Because if I told her now, she would know I'd lied through every moment of her confession, every interrogation about the details, every cold silence that made her feel guilty. She would know it was performance, that I wasn't the wounded husband, I was the hypocrite. And she would never forgive me for making her carry all the guilt alone. She pulled back, wiped her eyes, smiled at me with the fragile hope of a woman who'd been given a second chance she didn't know was built on sand. "Go crush the Brennan Review," she said. "I'll see you tonight." I nodded, kissed her forehead, and walked out of our brownstone into the Manhattan morning, carrying the weight of a lie that had just gotten heavier. Behind me, the wedding photograph on the mantel watched us fail. Two young faces, clasped hands, promises we'd both broken in different hotel rooms on different nights in the same city. I told myself I was protecting her, protecting us, protecting the marriage we might still salvage. But I knew the truth. I was protecting myself. She stood in the kitchen after I left. I know because I saw her through the window as I walked to the car, a silhouette against the morning light, one hand pressed to the counter, the other touching her chest where my arms had just been. She believed me. She believed I was trying. And every day I didn't tell the truth got heavier. The Brennan Review was in 6 hours. Naomi would be there. Sitting across the table, pretending we were colleagues, pretending Chicago never happened, pretending neither of us remembered what her skin felt like under those hotel sheets. And Penny would be there too, watching. The way she'd watched at the dinner party, filing away glances she couldn't interpret, suspicions she didn't yet know were suspicions. I had chosen my path. Hypocrisy over honesty. Performance over confession. And now I had to live with it. Upper East Side Street, taxi, footsteps on pavement, the ambient wealth of Manhattan. I told myself I was going to Dr. Webb's office to confront her, to demand accountability, to make someone, anyone, responsible for the grenade Penny had thrown into the center of our marriage. But if I'm honest now, looking back, I know the truth. I went because I needed an enemy, and she was easier to hate than myself. Dr. Caroline Webb practiced out of a brownstone on East 76th Street, 3 blocks from the Met, in the kind of neighborhood where therapists charge $400 an hour and no one blinks. The brass nameplate by the door was small, discreet. Dr. Caroline Webb, Ph.D., Clinical Psychology. I didn't have an appointment. I didn't care. Her receptionist, a young man with the professionally neutral expression of someone who'd been trained never to react, looked up as I entered. "Mr. Ashford, do you have an—" "I need to see Dr. Webb. Now. She's with a patient. If you'd like to schedule, tell her it's Graham Ashford, Penelope's husband." I heard my own voice, harder than I'd intended. "She'll make time." The receptionist disappeared through a door. I stood in that waiting room, tasteful art, leather chairs, a small fountain designed to mask the sound of someone else's suffering, and I felt my pulse in my temples. The rage I'd been building since I found that therapy journal needed somewhere to go. His reaction is his responsibility. The door opened. Dr. Caroline Webb stood in the threshold. She was 55, with silver-streaked dark hair cut in a professional bob, intelligent gray-blue eyes behind elegant rectangular glasses. Her posture was composed, the kind of calm that came from decades of sitting across from people in crisis. "Mr. Ashford." Her voice was warm but measured. "I have 15 minutes before my next appointment. Please, come in." Her office was exactly what I'd expected. Leather couch, matching armchairs, shelves lined with psychology texts. A small window overlooked a garden. Everything designed to feel safe, controlled, contained. I didn't sit. "You're the one who told her to do this." Dr. Webb lowered herself into her chair with the unhurried grace of someone who understood that silence was often more revealing than speech. She didn't respond immediately, just watched me with those gray-blue eyes, cataloging, assessing. "You told Penny to confess." My voice came out harder than I'd planned. "You gave her permission to drop 2 years of guilt on me and walk away clean." "I helped Penelope examine her choices," Dr. Webb said finally. Her tone was even, professional. "I helped her understand that secrets have psychological costs. What she chose to do with that understanding was her decision." "Was it?" I moved closer to her chair, not threatening but not retreating either. "Because I read her journal, the one where she wrote down your advice. His reaction is his responsibility, not yours. That's what you told her, isn't it?" Dr. Webb's expression didn't change. "You read Penelope's private therapy journal." "She left it on her desk." "That wasn't what I asked." The observation landed. I felt heat climb my neck. "That's not the point. The point is, you gave my wife a permission slip to detonate our marriage and then told her she didn't have to deal with the fallout." "Is that how you see it?" "That's how it is. She unloaded her guilt, and now I'm the one carrying it. She feels better. I feel destroyed. And you told her that was acceptable, that my pain was my responsibility, not hers." Dr. Webb removed her glasses, cleaned them slowly with a cloth from her desk drawer, the deliberate gesture of someone creating space before responding. "Mr. Ashford, confession and its aftermath are complex territories." She replaced her glasses, her gray-blue eyes meeting mine with uncomfortable directness. "When someone we love tells us a painful truth, we experience it as a wound, because it is. But the alternative is a marriage built on concealment. I believe honesty, however painful, creates the possibility of authentic repair." "Repair?" I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "She told me she slept with someone else. How exactly do I repair that?" "Many couples do, through communication, understanding, mutual accountability." Mutual accountability. I let the words hang in the air between us. "She's accountable for her affair. What am I accountable for?" Dr. Webb was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted, softer but more penetrating. "That's an interesting question, Mr. Ashford." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you've come to my office without an appointment to confront me about your wife's confession." She leaned forward slightly, not aggressive but focused. "You're angry, wounded. That's understandable. But there's something else, isn't there?" I felt my jaw clench. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." Her eyes held mine, patient, searching. "Your wife told you her hardest truth. She took a risk. And your reaction, coming here, attacking the process, suggests you're not just receiving her confession. You're defending against something. Do you have something you need to unload too, Mr. Ashford?" The question hit me like cold water. For 1 second, maybe 2, I felt everything I'd been hiding rise up behind my teeth. Chicago, Naomi, the hotel room, the 3 years of pretending it never happened, the weight of watching my wife confess while I sat on my own identical sin. Dr. Webb saw it. I know she did. That flicker in my expression, the moment of exposure before the mask slammed back down. I don't know what you're implying. My voice came out flat, controlled. But my hands were shaking, and I pressed them to my sides to hide it. I came here because my wife told me she had an affair, and you encouraged her to do it without considering what it would do to me. I see. Dr. Webb's voice was gentle now, almost sad. Well, if you ever want to explore what you might be carrying, Mr. Ashford, my door is open, for you as well as Penelope. I should have left then. Should have turned and walked out with whatever dignity I could salvage. Instead, I said, "You didn't consider the cost. You taught her that confession is healing, but you never asked who would carry the weight she dropped." "Is that what concerns you?" Dr. Webb asked. "The weight of what she told you, or the weight of what you haven't?" I left without answering. The December air hit my face as I stepped onto 76th Street. Cold, clean. The kind of cold that should have cleared my head. Instead, I walked toward the subway with Dr. Webb's question echoing in my skull. "Do you have something you need to unload too?" She saw something. I don't know how much, but she saw it. And now I was wondering, would she tell Penny? Would you confront the messenger to avoid facing your own message? 2 days after Dr. Webb's question, I was back in Naomi's orbit, not by choice. The Brennan Dynamics portfolio required quarterly FaceTime with their executive team. That meant sitting in their Hudson Yards lobby, waiting for a meeting I was dreading, knowing she would be in that room. Penny was CFO. Naomi was COO. Every meeting, every presentation, every goddamn handshake was a minefield. And I was the bomb. The lobby of Brennan Dynamics was designed to impress. 40-foot ceilings, a living wall of greenery climbing one side, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River. The kind of space that whispered, "We have arrived," without ever saying it out loud. I sat in one of the leather chairs, reviewing my notes, pretending to focus. The Brennan review was in 30 minutes. Marcus would be watching my performance like a hawk. Penny would be there, presenting quarterly projections. And Naomi... Graham. Her voice was low, controlled. I looked up to find Naomi Chen standing 3 feet away, immaculate in a fitted black blazer and silk blouse. Her long, dark hair swept over one shoulder. Her dark eyes held mine with the intensity of someone who'd been waiting for this moment. "We need to talk." She glanced around the lobby, crowded but anonymous. "Now, before the meeting." I followed her. She led me to a small alcove off the main lobby, a glass-walled space designed for private calls, visible from outside but acoustically isolated. The irony wasn't lost on me. We could be seen, but not heard, just like our secret. Naomi turned to face me. Her expression was harder than I'd seen at the dinner party, professional armor fully deployed. "You need to stop looking at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you're afraid of me, or guilty around me, or..." She stopped, drew a breath. "Penny will notice, Graham, if she hasn't already." I felt the accusation land. I can't help how I look at you. I can't be in the same room with you and pretend nothing happened. You've been pretending for 3 years. Naomi's voice sharpened. What changed? What changed? The question hung between us in that glass box, visible to everyone passing by and yet utterly private. She confessed. The words came out harder than I intended. Penny told me everything about her affair, 2 years ago in Chicago. Naomi's expression flickered, surprise, then understanding, then something I couldn't read. Her Chicago, she said quietly. Not ours. No, not ours. I moved closer, lowering my voice. But now I can't look at her and say I forgive her when I stopped. Couldn't finish. When you did the same thing. Naomi's voice was flat. Is that what you were going to say? Worse. I did worse. She slept with a stranger, someone she never saw again. I slept with... I gestured helplessly. You. Her partner. Her friend. Someone who's still in our lives. For a moment I saw something crack in Naomi's composure. A flash of vulnerability behind the professional mask. Then it sealed shut again. You don't get to do this, Graham. Do what? Use me as your excuse. Her voice dropped lower, but the intensity increased. You're drowning in guilt right now, I see it. And you're looking at me like I'm your life raft, or your anchor, I can't tell which. But I'm neither. Naomi. You made a choice that night. She cut me off. In Chicago. You chose to follow me to my room. You chose to stay. You chose 3 years of silence. Those were your choices, Graham, not mine. The words hit like fists. Because she was right. I'd spent weeks interrogating Penny about her affair, cataloging every detail of her betrayal, building a case for her guilt, when my own guilt was older, deeper, and directed at someone she trusted. And now I was looking at Naomi like she was somehow responsible for carrying the weight I'd put on both of us. I'm not trying to put this on you. Then what are you trying to do? Her dark eyes searched mine. Because right now, you're walking around like a man about to explode. And when you explode, Graham, you're going to take everyone with you. Me, Penny, your marriage, your career. What am I supposed to do? Own it. Her voice softened, the first hint of warmth since she'd intercepted me. Or bury it, but stop standing in between. It's killing you, and it's going to get us both caught. I stared at her. This woman I'd spent one night with 3 years ago. The woman I'd convinced myself meant nothing, was nothing, a mistake easily buried. But looking at her now, really looking, I saw the truth I'd been avoiding. She wasn't nothing. She never had been. And she was right. I was going to get us both caught if I didn't get myself under control. Naomi, I started, then stopped. I didn't know what I wanted to say. I'm sorry? I miss you? I hate that we're trapped like this? She saw the confusion on my face, and her expression shifted, just for a moment, to something that looked like grief. I loved you, she said quietly, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. That night, and after. I know we agreed to forget it. I know it was supposed to mean nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Not for me. The admission hit me like a blow. I've spent 3 years watching you at dinner parties, at client meetings, at every place where Penny brings me into your life. And I've kept my distance, kept my silence, because that's what we agreed. But now you're falling apart, Graham. And if you fall, I fall with you. Through the glass walls of the alcove, I could see the lobby continuing. People in suits, phones in hands, the machinery of corporate life grinding forward. And here we were, 2 people who'd made a terrible mistake, trying to keep it buried while it clawed its way toward the surface. I don't know what to do, I admitted. I don't know how to be in a room with Penny and pretend I'm the victim. I don't know how to be in a room with you and pretend we're colleagues. Then figure it out. Naomi straightened, pulling her armor back into place. Because in 25 minutes, we're all going to be in the same conference room, and I cannot have you looking at me like your conscience come to life. She walked past me, back toward the elevators, but at the threshold of the alcove, she paused. "For what it's worth," she said without turning, "I'm sorry. For what we did. For what it's costing you now." "Naomi, don't." She turned. Her eyes were bright, tears she wouldn't let fall. "Don't make this harder than it already is." She walked away. Her heels clicked on marble, swallowed by the lobby noise, until she was just another figure in a black blazer disappearing into an elevator. I stood in that glass alcove, visible to everyone and seen by no one, and I felt the weight of everything I'd been hiding pressing down until I could barely breathe. Would you forgive someone for telling you a truth you weren't ready to? Here. She loved me. She'd carried that for 3 years without saying it, and I'd been so focused on my own guilt that I'd never once considered what she might be carrying. 2 weeks after Penny's confession. 2 weeks of pretending, of sleeping in the same bed without touching, of breakfast conversations that circled the wound without ever landing, of counting the hours until I could be alone with my guilt. And now, another party, another performance. The brownstone looked beautiful. Penny had hired the same caterers as before, arranged the same flowers, set the same ambient lighting that made our 12 years of marriage look like a magazine spread. She wore emerald green again, the color that made her dark eyes warm and her cheekbones catch the light. And she moved through the crowd like the CFO she was, controlled, charming, untouchable. I watched her from across the living room. She was laughing at something Marcus was saying. Her hand rested briefly on his arm, the gesture of a woman who knew how to work a room. Her wedding ring caught the lamplight, flashing like a signal. We're fine. We're happy. Nothing is wrong. But something was wrong. I could feel it in the way she'd looked at me before the guests arrived, assessing, measuring. The way her eyes had lingered on the collar of my shirt, as if checking for evidence she didn't yet know to look for. She was suspicious. I could taste it in the air between us. The Brennan review had gone well enough. I'd performed competence. Marcus had seemed satisfied. Penny had presented projections that made everyone in the room richer on paper, and through it all, I'd felt Naomi's presence like a hand on my throat. She was here tonight. Of course she was. Penny's business partner, her closest colleague. How could she not be? She stood near the windows now, wine glass in hand, talking to a junior executive about something I couldn't hear. I wasn't looking at her. I was extremely conscious of not looking at her. Which meant, of course, that I was tracking her every movement. The twist of her hair when she tilted her head, the way her fingers wrapped around the glass stem, the moment her eyes drifted toward me and away, as if she couldn't help it, as if we were two magnets that kept finding each other despite every intention to stay apart. I forced myself to look away, engaged a portfolio client in conversation about market volatility, laughed at a joke I didn't hear, performed. But I could feel Penny watching. Something slower, more melancholy. The party wound down the way these things always do, guests drifting toward the door, promises to meet for lunch, the social arithmetic of favors owed and collected. By 11, only the caterers remained, quietly dismantling the evidence of a successful evening. Penny stood in the kitchen, shoes off, earrings removed, the armor of the CFO falling away piece by piece. She had a glass of wine in her hand, her first real drink of the night. She'd been performing, too. I leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "Good crowd," I said. The words sounded hollow, even to me. Was it? She didn't look up, just swirled her wine, watching the ruby liquid catch the under-cabinet lighting. "I wouldn't know. I barely saw you." "I was networking, working the room." "Were you?" Something in her tone made me still, careful. I recognized that voice, the one she used in negotiations, right before she made her move. "What's that supposed to mean?" Penny set down her wine glass, turned to face me fully. Her dark eyes were tired, but underneath the fatigue was something sharper. "You barely spoke to me all night, Graham." But you couldn't stop tracking Naomi." The words landed in the space between us like a dropped glass. Clean, precise, shattering. "That's ridiculous." My voice came out too fast. "I wasn't tracking anyone. She's your business partner. She was in the room. I watched you." Penny's voice was quiet. Not accusing, observational. The way she might describe a trend in quarterly data. "Every time she moved, your eyes followed. Every time she spoke to someone, you registered it. And when she left at 10:30, you visibly relaxed." "You're imagining things." "Am I?" She picked up her wine again, took a slow sip. "At the dinner party last week, the one where I finally noticed, you could barely look at her. Tonight, you couldn't look away. It's like you're oscillating between avoidance and surveillance, neither of which is normal." I felt the walls of my carefully constructed performance begin to crack. Every instinct told me to deflect, deny, redirect, to do what I'd been doing for 3 years. But Penny wasn't stupid. She never had been. "Something's wrong." Her voice softened, but her eyes stayed sharp. "And I don't think it's just my confession. That's not what I'm seeing when I look at you. That's not what I'm feeling when we're in the same room." "What are you feeling?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Like you're hiding something. Like every conversation we've had since I confessed has been strategic. Like you're managing me instead of talking to me." The observation was too close to true. I could feel the ground shifting beneath me. "I'm not hiding anything." The lie scraped against my throat. "I'm processing. You told me something devastating, and I'm trying to process, right." Penny set down her glass. Her wedding ring clicked against the counter. "You've been processing for 2 weeks, and somehow the way you're processing involves watching Naomi Chen like she's either a threat or a—" She stopped, didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. The silence between us filled with everything she was beginning to suspect and couldn't yet prove. "It's late," I said finally. "We're both tired. This isn't the time to—" "When is the time, Graham?" Her voice cracked on my name. "When will it be the right time for you to actually talk to me? Because I confessed to you. I told you my worst truth, and I've been waiting 2 weeks for you to, I don't know, yell, cry, forgive, something real. Instead, you're performing, and I can't figure out why." I looked at my wife, this woman I'd shared 12 years with, this woman who just noticed more in one evening than she'd seen in 3 years of looking. She was standing in our kitchen, barefoot, exhausted, asking me for something I couldn't give her. The truth. "I don't know what you want me to say." "Neither do I." She picked up her wine, walked past me toward the stairs. "But I'm starting to think there's something you're not saying. And when I figure out what it is—" She paused at the doorway, looked back. "When I figure out what it is, Graham, I hope it's not what I'm starting to suspect." She went upstairs. I heard her footsteps on the hardwood, heard the bedroom door close softly. I stood in the kitchen alone, surrounded by the debris of another successful performance. And I realized she was hunting now. She didn't know what she was looking for, but she was looking. Would you rather live with a beautiful lie or an ugly truth? The wedding photograph on the mantel caught my eye through the doorway. Young faces, clasped hands, promises neither of us had kept. I poured myself a whiskey, the first real drink I'd had since the night she confessed. This time, I drank it. The summons came the morning after the cocktail party.
Marcus's assistant. Not a text, not an email, but his actual assistant calling my direct line, with 4 words that made my stomach drop. "Mr. Price wants you. Now." I took the elevator to the 47th floor with the taste of last night's whiskey still coating my tongue. I'd slept maybe 3 hours. Penny had been gone when I woke. Early meeting, her note said, but we both knew she was avoiding me. When I figure out what it is, I hope it's not what I'm starting to suspect. Her words had followed me into a restless sleep, tangled with dreams of Chicago hotel rooms and conference photographs and the slow-motion collapse of everything I'd built. Marcus's corner office occupied the northwest corner of Ashford and Price, a space designed to intimidate clients and remind partners who'd actually built this firm. Floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 walls, Manhattan spread out below like a kingdom. His mahogany desk was antique, inherited from his
father's law practice. The art on the walls was real, not investment pieces, but family heirlooms. Old money signaling to new money that some things couldn't be bought. He was standing at the window when I entered, his back to me, watching the city. "Close the door, Graham." I closed it, waited. The silence stretched until it became a weapon. "The Brennans called this morning." Marcus didn't turn around. His reflection was visible in the glass. Silver hair, squared shoulders, the posture of a man who'd spent 40 years controlling rooms. Lydia specifically. "You know what she wanted to discuss?" "The quarterly review." "You." He turned. His blue eyes were cold in a way I'd rarely seen. "She wanted to discuss you." The word hung in the air like an accusation. "What about me?" "She said you seemed distracted at the review. Performative was her exact word. Same one she used about the party." Marcus walked to his desk but didn't sit, stood behind it like a judge at a bench. "She asked if there was anything she should know about, anything that might affect your judgment managing their family's assets." "I'm fine. The review went well. The numbers were excellent. Your presentation was competent. But Lydia Brennan didn't build a 4-generation fortune by ignoring instinct." Marcus leaned forward, palms flat on the desk. "She smelled something, Graham. She doesn't know what it is yet, but she smelled it. And she's watching now." I felt the walls of my compartmentalized life beginning to collapse inward. Professional. Personal. The affair I was hiding. The affair I was supposedly forgiving. All of it bleeding into each other. "It's been a difficult month," I said, choosing words carefully. "Penny and I are working through something." "I know." Marcus's voice dropped. "I don't know the specifics, and I don't want to. But I know when a man's marriage is in trouble. I've been through it twice myself. The Brennan account is up for renewal in 4 weeks. He straightened, crossing his arms. 4 weeks. That's $500 million under management. That's 40% of this firm's revenue. That's the account that put your name on the door, Graham." "I'm aware." "Are you?" His eyes held mine. "Because right now, you're walking around this office like a man trying to hold water in his fists. Everyone sees it. Elena sees it. The junior partners see it. And if they see it, clients see it." "What are you asking me to do?" Marcus moved around the desk until he was standing directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, the same expensive, old-world scent from our last conversation, the smell of money that predated mine by generations. "I'm asking you to get your house in order." His voice was quiet but final. "Fix your marriage or end it. I don't care which, but do it fast, do it clean, and do it quietly." Because if Lydia Brennan sees one more flicker of instability, one more performative moment, she will move that account to Goldman before the renewal ink is dry. "And if that happens," he continued, I will have to make changes to this partnership that neither of us wants. The threat was clear. Professional annihilation if I couldn't hold my mask in place. I understand. Do you? Marcus studied me for a long moment. Then, softer. I've known you 15 years, Graham. You're one of the best advisors I've ever worked with. Whatever's happening at home, whatever you're carrying, find a way to carry it without dropping it in this office. I nodded. Once. Is that all? One more thing. He walked back to the window, looked out at the city, the grid of streets, the flow of money, the machinery of wealth that didn't care about any individual's private devastation. Your wife's company is a significant portion of the Brennan portfolio. That means every meeting, every quarterly, every client dinner, she'll be there. And so will Naomi Chen. I said nothing. Couldn't. I don't know what's happening between the three of you. Marcus's voice was almost gentle now. And I don't want to know. But whatever it is, lock it down. Because if your personal life starts bleeding into Brennan Dynamics business, if Lydia Brennan starts asking questions about why her CFO and COO look uncomfortable around her wealth manager. He turned, met my eyes. Then we have a much bigger problem than a marriage in trouble. I left his office with the weight of $500 million pressing down on the weight I was already carrying. The elevator descended. I watched the floor numbers drop and thought about what Marcus had really said, not the threats, not the ultimatum, but the permission he'd given without meaning to. Fix your marriage or fake it convincingly. I don't care which. He didn't care about truth. None of them did. Not Marcus, not the Brennans, not the institutional machinery of wealth that I'd built my career inside. They cared about optics, about stability, about the appearance of a life in order, regardless of what was rotting underneath. And if that was the standard, I could meet it. I'd been meeting it for 3 years. I could keep lying, keep performing, keep the mask in place long enough to renew the account, save my career, maybe even save my marriage, if Penny never discovered what I was hiding. But Penny was hunting now. I'd seen it in her eyes last night. She didn't know what she was looking for, but she was looking. And Marcus had just reminded me exactly what I would lose if she found it. Would you sacrifice your integrity for your survival? And if you did, would you still be you? The elevator doors opened. I stepped onto the trading floor wearing the mask Marcus required. 40% of the firm's revenue. $500 million. My name on the door. The cost of truth kept rising. And I kept choosing the lie, the quiet of secrets about to surface. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. Penny told me about it later, much later, when we were finally telling each other the truth. She described it with the clinical precision of a woman who had spent her career analyzing data, finding patterns, building cases from fragments of information. She was looking for my passport. We had a conference in London the following month, a joint presentation to European investors, Brennan Dynamics and Ashford and Price in partnership. She needed my passport number for the visa application, a routine task, the kind of thing a wife does for her husband without thinking twice. I was at the office. The brownstone was empty. And Penny, my wife, the CFO, the woman who had spent 2 weeks watching me track Naomi across cocktail parties, was standing in my study looking for a passport in my desk. She tried the top drawer first. Nothing. The second drawer held financial documents, quarterly statements, tax filings, the organized records of a careful man. The third drawer was locked. Penny paused, looked at the small brass lock. In 12 years of marriage, she'd never tried to open it, had never wondered what required locking in a desk inside their own home. But that was before her confession, before his strange reaction, before she'd watched him track Naomi Chen like a man surveilling his own guilt. The key was in his sock drawer. She found it in the false bottom of an antique box that had been his grandfather's. A man who kept secrets in obvious places, hidden only by the assumption that no one would look. The drawer opened. Inside, documents. More quarterly reports, these older, archived. A leather passport holder. And beneath it all, a manila folder labeled in Graham's handwriting, Personal Correspondence. She should have stopped there. Should have taken the passport, locked the drawer, never mentioned what she'd found or almost found. But something in her had shifted over these 2 weeks. The wife who had confessed her own affair and received only performance in return. The woman who had watched her husband oscillate between avoidance and surveillance around her business partner. The CFO who had built a career on pattern recognition and data analysis. She was hunting now, and she'd found a trail. Inside the folder, a conference program. Wealth Management Summit, Chicago, Illinois, November 2021. 3 years ago, before her affair, before the fractures that had led to the fractures, the past rising up with the smell of old paper and hidden shame. She opened the program, and there, tucked inside, a photograph. 2 people. Graham on the left, Naomi on the right, their shoulders touching. Smiling at the camera with the easy intimacy of people who had already decided something, or were about to. Date stamped in the corner, November 17th, 2021. Penny stared. Her hands trembled, just slightly, just enough that the photograph wavered in her grip. She recognized that smile. She'd seen it in their wedding photos, in the early years when he still looked at her like she was the only thing worth seeing. She hadn't seen it directed at herself in a very long time. It could be nothing. Colleagues at conferences take photos together. Friends stand close. Smiles can mean anything. But she knew. Looking at that photograph, she knew. The way his body was angled toward Naomi, the way her hand rested on his arm just outside the frame, you could see the edge of her fingers. The way they were both looking at the camera as if it had interrupted something they'd rather be doing alone. She knew. She didn't confront. That wasn't Penny's way. She'd built a career on gathering evidence, building cases, waiting for the right moment to present findings that couldn't be refuted. She photographed the photograph, the program, the folder, the open drawer. Then she put everything back exactly as she'd found it, locked the drawer, returned the key to the false bottom of the antique box. And she walked downstairs with her husband's passport in her hand, and the image of his smile, directed at another woman, burned into her phone. She didn't mention it when I came home that night, handed me the passport with a neutral expression, asked about my day, made dinner, performed. I didn't know, not then. I thought the mask was holding. I thought I had time. But Penny was building a case now, collecting evidence, connecting dots I didn't know she could see. We sat across from each other at the table that night, eating a meal I can't remember, talking about things I can't recall. And the whole time she was carrying an image in her phone that would eventually end everything. Would you search for truth if you suspected it would destroy you? Or would you rather live with doubt? Penny had made her choice, and I had no idea. She told me later that the investigation took 3 days. 3 days of using every tool her position gave her: CFO privileges, corporate access, the institutional machinery of a company she'd helped build. 3 days of building a case against her own husband with the same precision she'd use for a hostile acquisition. Penny Ashford had spent her career analyzing data, finding patterns, building narratives from fragments that others dismissed as noise. Now she turned those skills inward, and she was very, very good. Office at night, building nearly empty, the hum of solitary work. Day 1, the conference schedule. She pulled the archived program for the 2021 Wealth Management Summit, cross-referenced Graham's registered sessions with her own calendar from that week. He'd been in Chicago for 3 days. She'd been in Singapore, closing the Brennan acquisition. She remembered now. They'd barely spoken that week. She'd been consumed by the deal. 18-hour days, client dinners, the adrenaline of closing something enormous. She'd called him once, maybe twice, brief conversations, distracted. He'd said he missed her. She'd said she'd make it up to him when she got home. She never had. Day 2, the hotel records. CFO privileges had their uses. Brennan Dynamics maintained corporate accounts at major hotel chains, negotiated rates for executive travel. The Langham Chicago was one of them. She logged into the account, pulled the November 2021 records. Graham's reservation, room 1849, 3 nights. Naomi's reservation, room 1847, same dates. Adjacent rooms, same floor. The kind of coincidence that wasn't coincidence at all. But that wasn't proof. Colleagues often stayed at the same hotels, on the same floors. The company probably had a preferred wing. She needed more. Day 3, the keycard data. Hotel security systems logged every room entry, every door opened, every timestamp recorded. The data was archived for years, insurance purposes, liability protection, the kind of information corporations kept and forgot. Penny didn't forget. She requested Graham's keycard log from the Langham Chicago, November 2021. Listed it as a routine security audit. No one questioned a CFO's request. The file arrived at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday night. She sat alone in her office at Brennan Dynamics, the city glittering through her window, and she opened the document that would confirm everything she suspected. Room 1849 keycard activity, November 17, 2021. 11:47 p.m. Room entry. 6:23 a.m. Room entry. 8 hours unaccounted for. He hadn't slept in his room that night. She sat back in her chair. The city lights blurred slightly. Tears she wouldn't let fall. Not yet. Not until she was ready. He'd been somewhere else. For 8 hours. And she knew exactly where. She pulled Naomi's keycard data next. Room 1847. 11:42 p.m. Room entry. 11:44 p.m. Room entry. 6:25 a.m. Room entry. 2 entries at 11:42 and 11:44. Someone entering, then someone else entering 2 minutes later. And then nothing until morning. The story wrote itself. Penny stood at her office window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The same view she'd worked decades to earn. The corner office, the title, the company she'd helped build from startup to empire. And now, the evidence that her husband had slept with her business partner, her closest professional ally, the woman she'd trusted with billion-dollar decisions and late-night strategy sessions, and the kind of vulnerable conversations you only have with real friends. 3 years ago, before her affair. Before any of this, he'd betrayed her first. The realization landed like a physical blow. All those weeks of guilt, all those nights lying awake, wondering if he could ever forgive her for Chicago. All those interrogations about her affair, the questions that felt like accusations, the silences that felt like judgment. He'd been judging her for doing exactly what he'd done. Worse, he'd been hiding it, making her carry all the guilt while he sat on his own identical sin. The hypocrisy was staggering. I didn't know any of this was happening. I went to work, came home, performed the role of wounded husband trying to forgive, watched Penny for signs of suspicion, and saw only a wife working long hours, distracted by quarterly pressures. I thought her distance was guilt. It was investigation. For 3 days, she built a case I didn't know existed, gathered evidence I didn't know she had access to. And somewhere in those long office nights, the woman who had confessed to me with tears in her eyes transformed into something else entirely. Not a guilty wife seeking forgiveness, a CFO conducting due diligence on her own marriage. She had the photo, the hotel records, the keycard data, the timestamps that proved exactly where I'd spent those 8 hours. All she needed now was confirmation. One final piece of evidence that would make the case unassailable. Would you confront someone with incomplete evidence? Or would you wait until you were certain, even if waiting meant more days of living with the truth you couldn't unsee? Penny waited. She was building more than a confrontation. She was building an endgame. And I had no idea the ground was already collapsing beneath me. Silverware on china, the ambient wealth of a $200 lunch. She invited Naomi to lunch. I learned about it afterward, piecing together what had happened from fragments Penny shared, and from Naomi's shattered expression when I saw her next. But I can imagine the scene clearly now. I've had 3 years of imagining it. Le Bernardin, Midtown. The kind of restaurant where reservations required 3 weeks' notice unless you were Penelope Ashford, CFO of one of the most successful tech companies in the city. Penny secured a table by the window, natural light, visible from multiple angles, the setting for a performance she'd been rehearsing in her mind for days. Naomi arrived at 12:35, 5 minutes late. She wore a cream blazer over a black silk tank, her long dark hair swept over one shoulder. Professional, composed. The woman Penny had trusted with billion-dollar decisions and midnight strategy calls. The woman who had slept with her husband. "I'm so sorry," Naomi said, sliding into the chair across from Penny. "The board call ran long. You know how Marcus gets." "I do." Penny smiled. The smile she used in negotiations, warm on the surface, ice underneath. "I ordered us wine, the Sancerre you like." "You remembered." "I remember everything." Something flickered in Naomi's expression, too fast to name, too slow to miss. Penny filed it, added it to the case she was building. They ordered, discussed the quarterly projections that were ostensibly the reason for this meeting, talked through the Brennan portfolio allocation, the European expansion timeline, the usual machinery of their professional partnership. Penny watched every gesture, every micro-expression, every moment when Naomi's composure slipped by a millimeter before snapping back into place. And then, between the appetizer and the main course, Penny made her move. "You and Graham seem tense lately." Naomi's hand paused mid-reach for her wine glass, a fractional hesitation, maybe half a second, before the motion completed. "Tense?" Her voice was steady, too steady. "I haven't noticed." "At the cocktail party last week, He could barely look at you, and when he did, there was something odd in his expression. We've been navigating client boundaries. Naomi took a careful sip of wine. You know how it is. Professional relationships require calibration when spouses are involved. Penny nodded slowly. Let the silence stretch. That makes sense. She waited until Naomi's shoulders had just begun to relax, until the danger seemed to have passed. Then she said, 3 years ago, Chicago, the Wealth Management Summit. Naomi's glass froze halfway to her lips. You were both there, weren't you? The question hung in the air between them like a blade. Penny watched Naomi's face cycle through expressions: surprise, fear, calculation, forced calm in the space of 2 heartbeats. Yes. Naomi set down her glass. Her hand wasn't quite steady. It's an annual conference. Graham attends every year. I was in Singapore that week. Penny's voice was conversational, light. The voice of a woman making small talk. Closing the acquisition. I barely talked to him the whole trip. I remember. You were very busy. I was. Penny picked up her own wine, swirled it slowly. Did you two spend much time together at the conference? Naomi's face had gone pale beneath her makeup. Her dark eyes darted to Penny's, searching, evaluating, and found nothing but pleasant inquiry. The usual, she said carefully. Conference sessions, the networking dinner. Graham and I served on a panel together about family office management. How nice. Penny. Naomi leaned forward slightly. Why are you asking about a conference from 3 years ago? Penny smiled, set down her wine, looked directly into Naomi's eyes with the calm of a woman who already knew everything and was simply confirming the details. No reason. I was just remembering. She signaled for the check. Lunch is on me, Penny said, signing the receipt with a flourish. Considerate thanks for all those late nights keeping the company running. She stood, gathered her bag, looked down at Naomi, who hadn't moved, frozen in her chair with an expression of dawning horror. I should get back. The Brennan quarterly projections won't finalize themselves. Penny, Naomi's voice cracked. Is everything... Are you and Graham... We're fine. The smile again. Brilliant, false, devastating. Never better. She walked out of the restaurant without looking back. Behind her, she knew Naomi was sitting at that table, wine untouched, appetite gone, face pale as paper. I didn't know about the lunch until later. By then, it was already too late. Penny came home that evening with the calm of a woman who had made a decision. She asked about my day, made dinner, suggested we open a nice bottle of wine and eat at the dining table, something we hadn't done in weeks. I thought we could have a proper dinner, she said. Just the 2 of us. I should have seen it. Should have recognized the setup in her tone, too casual, too controlled. The same voice she used before she closed a deal or fired an executive. But I was so exhausted from carrying my own secrets that I couldn't see the trap being laid. That sounds nice, I said, and I walked straight into the end of my marriage. Repeated, building tension. Brownstone dining room, candles flickering, wine being poured, the atmospheric setup of a trap. She set the table herself that night, the good china, the wedding crystal, candles in the silver holders we'd received as gifts 12 years ago. My favorite meal, the lamb she only made on special occasions. I came home to find her waiting in the dining room, already seated, already smiling. She'd changed from her work clothes into something softer, a cashmere dress in deep burgundy that caught the candlelight. "I thought we could have a real dinner," she said. "No work talk, no phones, just us." I should have known. The effort, the candles, the careful staging of a scene. But I wanted so badly to believe we were turning a corner, that my performance of the wounded husband was working, that we might actually survive this. I sat across from her, accepted the wine she poured, told her about the Brennan Review that was coming up, the London conference, the routine details of a life still running on autopilot. She listened, smiled, asked questions, played her part with the same skill I'd been playing mine. The lamb was perfect. The wine was exceptional. And with every passing minute, I let myself believe that maybe, we were going to be okay. We finished dinner. She suggested we stay at the table for dessert. Tiramisu, my favorite, from the Italian place on Madison. "Before we do," she said, "there's something I want to show you." She reached into the bag beside her chair. My pulse didn't even quicken. I thought it was a document, some contract from the London trip, some schedule we needed to review. She set a photograph on the table. The candles, the room, the world holding its breath. For a moment, I didn't understand what I was looking at. A printed image on matte paper. Two people at a conference, shoulders touching, smiling. Then recognition hit like ice water. Me, Naomi, Chicago, 3 years ago. The photograph from my locked drawer. The evidence I'd been hiding since before any of this began. I looked up at Penny. Her face was calm, controlled. The face of a CFO delivering quarterly results that would annihilate someone's career. "Where did you—" "Your desk drawer. The locked one." Her voice was flat. No accusation, just facts. "I was looking for your passport. I found more than I expected." I couldn't speak, couldn't move. The photograph sat on the white tablecloth between us, bright evidence in the candlelight. "I did some research after I found it." Penny folded her hands on the table. "Hotel records, keycard data. Your room was 1849. Naomi's was 1847. You entered your room at 11:47 p.m. You didn't enter it again until 6:23 a.m. Penny. 8 hours unaccounted for." She continued as if I hadn't spoken. "And Naomi's room shows 2 entries within 2 minutes of each other, at 11:42 and 11:44 p.m. The precision was surgical. The data was irrefutable. The case was closed before I'd even known there was a trial. "I've been carrying guilt for 2 weeks," she said. Her voice finally cracked, just slightly, just enough. "Beating myself up for what I did in Chicago. Your Chicago. Watching you interrogate me for details while you sat on your own identical sin." She slid the photograph closer to me. Her finger tapped it once. "I thought I was the only liar, Graham." Her eyes met mine, dark and devastated, and seeing me, really seeing me for the first time. Was I? The candlelight flickered. The wine sat untouched. And between us, the photograph, evidence of a betrayal older than hers, hidden while I'd played the victim. I couldn't deny it, couldn't deflect, couldn't do anything but sit there and feel my carefully constructed fortress of hypocrisy crumble around me. "No, you weren't the only one. If your partner confessed an affair, would you tell them yours? Or would you stay silent and play the victim?" Comment below. No judgment. This is a safe space for uncomfortable truths. I told her everything. Not because I chose to, not because I was brave enough to confess, but because there was nothing left to hide behind. The photograph sat between us like a judge's verdict, and the only thing I could do was explain how I'd come to be guilty. It was 3 years ago. My voice sounded like a stranger's. The Chicago Conference, November 2021. I know the dates. Penny's voice was cold. I've memorized the timestamps. I nodded. Deserved that. You were in Singapore, closing the Brennan acquisition. We'd barely talked all week. I stopped. Started again. I was lonely. And I know that's not an excuse. I know lonely doesn't justify anything. No, it doesn't. Naomi and I were both at the hotel bar the last night. She'd just found out Marcus filed for divorce. We were both. Drunk and lonely. Penny finished my sentence. Go on. We went to her room. It was one night, one time. The next morning, we agreed it would never happen again, never be spoken of. We'd both pretend it hadn't happened. And you did. For 3 years. Yes. Penny was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Still cold, but something else beneath it. Something that might have been grief. Do you love her? The question cut deeper than I expected. No. I said it immediately, reflexively. Then, I don't know. I don't think so. What happened in Chicago wasn't about love. It was about... I stopped. Because the truth was harder than any of the truths I'd already told. It was about escape, I said finally. For one night, I didn't have to be me. The husband who wasn't enough. The partner who couldn't keep his wife's attention. The man who was so terrified of becoming his father that he... My voice broke. That he what? Penny asked quietly. My father was a serial cheater. The words came out rough, scraped raw. He destroyed my mother. I watched her fall apart over years. Every time she found out, every time he promised it was the last time, every time he broke that promise. I swore I would never be him, never do what he did, never become the man who broke someone he loved. I looked at Penny, at her face in the candlelight, at the woman I'd married and betrayed and lied to for 3 years. And then I became exactly that. The confession hung in the air between us. The deepest truth I'd never told her. Not about Chicago, not about Naomi, but about the wound underneath it all. The fear that had shaped me. The father I'd spent my life running from, and ended up mirroring anyway. You let me carry all the guilt. Penny's voice was barely a whisper. For 2 weeks, you interrogated me about my affair while you were hiding yours. You made me feel like the only one who'd broken our vows. I know. You watched me confess the hardest thing I've ever said, and you stayed silent. I know. Why? Her voice cracked. If you'd just told me when I told you, if you'd been honest, we could have faced it together. Both of us guilty, both of us trying to understand. But you chose to let me suffer alone. I was afraid. The words came out before I could stop them. I was afraid that if I told you, I'd be him, my father, the man who destroys the woman he loves. I thought if I could keep it hidden, I could still be the good man, the one who would never hurt you the way he hurt her. But you did hurt me. Penny's tears fell now, silently, streaming down her face. You hurt me every day you didn't tell me. Every time you looked at me with judgment while you carried the same sin. You hurt me by making me carry all of it alone. I know. It was all I could say, the only truth I had left. So what now? I stared at her across the table. At the candles burning low, at the wine we'd never touched, at the photograph between us, evidence of a betrayal that was now fully exposed. I don't know. Neither of us moved, neither of us spoke. The brownstone held us like a museum. All those objects we'd collected together, all those memories on shelves and walls, all that accumulated life that suddenly felt like evidence of something that no longer existed. Two liars sitting in candlelight. Both guilty, both wounded, both finally honest. Graham's phone buzzed on the table. A text notification. He glanced at it reflexively. Marcus Price. Brennan review tomorrow. Be ready. Penny saw the sender. Her expression shifted. Something new entering the devastation. Your partner. Her voice was flat. Or mine. The collision of professional and personal. Inescapable now. Tomorrow I would sit in a conference room with Penny and Naomi and the Brennan family, and everyone would expect me to perform competence while my marriage lay in ruins. I have to be at the office early. The words sounded absurd even to me. Business logistics in the ashes of everything we'd built. I know. Penny wiped her eyes, stood slowly. I have to present the quarterly projections. We looked at each other across the debris of our dinner. The romantic meal meant to be a trap, the confession that had exploded everything. We should sleep, Penny said. We can talk more after. She walked past me toward the stairs, paused at the doorway. Graham? Yes? I don't know if we survive this. Her voice was quiet but steady. I don't know if I can forgive you for hiding it while you judged. Me. For making me carry the guilt alone. But I'm glad you finally told the truth, even if it was only because you had no choice. She went upstairs. I heard her footsteps on the hardwood, heard the bedroom door close softly. I sat at the table for another hour, watching the candles burn down, looking at the photograph that had ended everything. The wedding photograph on the mantel caught my eye through the doorway. Those young faces, those clasped hands, those promises we'd both broken in different hotel rooms on different nights in the same city. We sat there for an hour without speaking. Two liars who'd finally told the truth. And the truth hadn't set us free. It just showed us the cage we'd been in all along. Brownstone holding its breath. I didn't sleep. At some point in the night, I moved from the dining room to the couch. At some point, the candles guttered out. At some point, the photograph of Naomi and me disappeared from the table. Penny must have taken it. Evidence collected, case closed. Dawn came the way it always does, indifferent. Gray December light creeping through windows that cost more than most people's cars. The brownstone settling into another day, unaware that the people inside it had become strangers overnight. I heard Penny before I saw her. Footsteps on the stairs. The pause at the landing where she would have looked down at me, sleeping on the couch in yesterday's clothes. Then the footsteps continuing to the kitchen. I found her at the island. Coffee cup in front of her, untouched. Steam rising and dissipating. Her dark hair was pulled back, her face bare of makeup, her eyes fixed on nothing. She looked older than she had yesterday. We both did. Did you sleep? My voice came out rough, unused. She didn't look up. No. Did you? No. The coffee maker beeped again. Neither of us moved to silence it. I crossed to the counter, poured coffee I wouldn't drink into a cup I wouldn't hold. The ritual of mourning performed without meaning. The Brennan review is at 2, Penny said. Her voice was flat, professional. The CFO delivering a schedule update. I know. Naomi will be there. I know. The silence between us filled with everything we couldn't say. Should we talk about last night? Should we pretend it didn't happen? Should we scream, cry, throw things? What do two people do the morning after they've both confessed to destroying their marriage? We drank coffee. Separately. In silence. I keep thinking, Penny said finally. Her fingers wrapped around the cup she still hadn't lifted. If you'd just told me when I told you, that first night, when I confessed and you sat there in that chair. I know. We could have... She stopped, looked at me for the first time that morning. Her dark eyes were bloodshot, exhausted, searching for something I wasn't sure I could give. Could have what? I asked. She didn't answer. Neither of us knew. That was the truth we couldn't face. The fantasy that mutual confession might lead to mutual healing, that if we'd both come clean at the same time, we might have held each other and cried and started rebuilding right there in the living room. But we hadn't. I'd sat in that chair and lied by omission. For 2 weeks, I'd interrogated her about her affair while hiding mine. I'd played the victim while being the perpetrator. And now we were. Here. Two people who had finally told each other the truth. And the truth hadn't fixed anything. It had just clarified the damage. I should shower, I said. The review. Yes. I walked past her toward the stairs, stopped at the doorway. Penny. She looked up, waiting. I wanted to say something, something that would bridge the distance, something that would matter. I'm sorry. I know, she said. I'm sorry too. 2 apologies, hanging in the air of our 12-year-old kitchen. Insufficient for the wounds, but the only words we had. Would mutual confession have changed anything? Or would it have just accelerated the ending? I went upstairs to shower, to dress, to prepare for the performance of competence while my marriage lay in pieces downstairs. The coffee grew cold on the counter. Neither of us ever drank it. The Brennan Quarterly Review began at 2 p.m. I arrived at 1:45, showered, shaved, suited. The Tom Ford Navy, the Patek Philippe, the armor of a man who manages other people's money for a living. Inside, I was ashes. The Ashford and Price conference room occupied the northeast corner of the 47th floor. Glass walls on 2 sides, Manhattan spread out below like a kingdom I no longer felt I deserved. The Brennan family representatives were already seated. Lydia Brennan at the head, her 2 sons flanking her, their legal counsel making notes no one would read. And across the table, Penny, in her charcoal power suit, her CFO armor. Eyes forward, posture perfect, not acknowledging my existence beyond a professional nod. Naomi, in black, as always, pale beneath her composure. Her eyes met mine for half a second before looking away. 3 people in a room full of people, each carrying a secret that was no longer secret, performing normalcy while everything burned. Marcus led the portfolio overview. I was scheduled for the asset allocation deep dive, 20 minutes of numbers, projections, recommendations, the kind of presentation I could usually deliver in my sleep. Today, I couldn't find my notes. I fumbled the opening, misstated a percentage, lost my place twice in the first 5 minutes. My hands trembled on the clicker, and I gripped it harder to hide the shaking. The equity allocation reflects a conservative approach to... I stopped. The number had vanished from my mind. Vanished entirely. 12%, Naomi said quietly, filling the gap. Her voice professional, helpful, the voice of a COO supporting her wealth manager. 12%, I repeated. Thank you. I didn't look at her, couldn't. I finished the presentation on autopilot. Numbers I'd memorized delivered without comprehension. Charts I'd prepared explained without conviction. 20 minutes that felt like hours. When I sat down, I could feel Lydia Brennan's eyes on me. 68, fourth-generation wealth. The kind of woman who'd spent a lifetime reading people across conference tables, across ballrooms, across the careful distances of old money. She missed nothing. "Graham," her voice cut through the room, "you seem distracted today." Every head turned. Marcus's expression tightened. Penny's hands stilled on her papers. Naomi looked at the table. "I apologize," I said. "It's been a challenging week. Personal matters." "Personal matters?" Lydia's voice was cool, not unkind, but clinical. "I see." She glanced at Penny, at Naomi, back to me. Something flickered in her expression. Recognition, perhaps, the pattern becoming visible. "Personal matters always affect professional judgment," she said. "That's why we prefer advisors with stable foundations. It's not a criticism, Graham. It's an observation." The room held its breath. "I understand," I said. "It won't affect the quality of—" "I'm sure it won't." Lydia gathered her papers. A signal. The meeting was ending. "Marcus, we'll speak this week about the renewal terms." She rose. Her sons followed. The legal counsel packed his useless notes. At the door, Lydia paused, looked back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Take care of yourself, Graham. Whatever's happening at home, attend to it. We've trusted this family's fortune to you for a long time. We'd like to continue." "Thank you." She left. The room emptied. Penny gathered her materials without a word, Naomi close behind. I remained seated. Marcus waited until we were alone. Then he walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back, and stared out at the city that kept making and unmaking men like us. 3 weeks, he said. His voice was quiet, final. "Marcus, 3 weeks until the renewal decision. Lydia was being polite, but her sons won't be. They're already suggesting alternative advisors, quietly, to me. I can fix this. The presentation was a symptom." He turned. His blue eyes were tired, almost sad. "I've known you 15 years, Graham. I watched you build a career on precision and reliability. And today, I watched you fumble through a quarterly review like a first-year associate." He was right. I had nothing to say. "Get your house in order," Marcus said. "I don't know what's happening with you and Penny and—" He paused, chose not to finish that sentence. "I don't want to know. But fix it. End it. Do something. Because right now, you're bleeding out in public." "And if I can't?" "Then I reassign the Brennan account to someone who can hold themselves together." He moved toward the door. "I'm sorry, Graham. I genuinely am. But I didn't build this firm to watch it collapse because one partner can't manage his personal life." I sat alone in the empty conference room. Manhattan glittering 47 floors below. The projector still showing my last slide, a pie chart of asset allocation that no longer mattered. "Would you sacrifice everything you built professionally to try to save something that might already be dead?" 3 weeks. To fix what might be unfixable. To save what might already be lost. The city kept moving outside the glass. Indifferent. Efficient. A machine that ground on regardless of the human wreckage inside its towers. The house holding 2 people who can't find their way. 3 days passed. 3 days of professional wreckage and personal silence. 3 days of me sleeping on the couch while Penny occupied the bedroom like territory in a war neither of us had declared. 3 days of Marcus's deadline ticking and Lydia Brennan's observation echoing. Personal matters always affect professional judgment. On the 4th evening, Penny found me in the study. I was staring at the empty drawer, the one that had held the photograph, the conference program, all the evidence of my failure. She'd taken everything. I didn't know where, didn't ask. Graham? I didn't turn. Penny? I've been thinking. Her voice was careful, measured. The voice of someone about to propose something fragile. About how we move forward. If we move forward. And? I think we should see Dr. Webb. Together. I turned then. She stood in the doorway of my study, the room where I'd hidden my secrets, where she'd discovered them, where everything I thought I'd buried had risen up to destroy us. You want to see the therapist, I said. My voice came out colder than I intended. The one who told you to confess without considering what it would do to me? She helped me find the courage to be honest. Penny's jaw tightened. Maybe she can help us both find the courage to figure out what comes next. Courage. The word tasted like copper. Is that what you call it? She gave you permission to dump your guilt without considering the consequences. That's not courage, Penny. That's absolution without confession. And what would you call what you did? Her voice sharpened. Hiding your affair for 3 years? Making me carry all the shame while you played the wounded husband? That's exactly what it is. She stepped into the study. Closer, not backing down. You're angry at Dr. Webb because her philosophy worked. Because I told the truth and you didn't. Because if I hadn't confessed, you never would have either. The accusation landed like a fist to the sternum. Because she was right. I hated Caroline Webb because she'd given Penny the framework to do what I'd been too cowardly to do. I hated her because her belief in honesty had exposed my hypocrisy. I hated her because she represented everything I'd failed to be. But I couldn't admit that. Not yet. I'm not sitting in a room with a woman who thinks confession is consequence-free, I said instead. I watched what your honesty did to me for 2 weeks. And now I've watched what mine did to you. And without honesty? Penny's voice broke slightly. Just slightly. What do we have then? More years of performing? More secrets eating us from the inside? I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. She stared at me for a long moment. I watched her process what I'd said. And what I hadn't. The woman who'd spent weeks investigating my secret, who'd seen through my performance at dinner parties, who understood me better than I'd given her credit for. You're afraid, she said finally. Quiet, not an accusation, an observation. Not of therapy, of what therapy might make you admit. Penny, you're afraid that if we sit in that room together, if we actually talk about everything, Chicago, the years before, what we stopped giving each other, you'll have to face why you became your father. And you'd rather stay angry at me than look at that. I had no defense, none that would hold. Maybe, I said, the word barely audible. Maybe you're right. I usually am. A ghost of her old humor, gone before it could take hold. She turned, walked to the door, stopped. I'm going to see Dr. Webb tomorrow, alone, to talk about what I do next. She didn't look back. If you want to join me, you know where her office is. And if I don't? Then I suppose that tells me everything I need to know. She left me standing in my empty study. The drawer still open, the secrets gone. the rain streaking down the windows like the tears I wasn't sure I knew how to cry anymore. Would you rather confront your failures in a room with a witness, or protect your pride and lose everything else? I didn't go to Dr. Webb's office the next day. Penny went alone, and the distance between us grew wider. Building emptying, the quiet of business ending. Penny told me about the conversation with Naomi later, much later when we were finally able to talk about everything without flinching. She described it the way she described quarterly reports, precise, clinical, every detail accounted for. But I could hear the tremor underneath, the places where the data became grief. Brennan Dynamics boardroom, empty except for 2 women. She scheduled the meeting for 5 p.m., after the building had largely emptied, after the assistants and junior executives had gone home, after there was no one left to witness what needed to happen. The Brennan Dynamics boardroom, 42nd floor, the room where she and Naomi had built an empire together. Acquisition strategies, product launches, the 100 small decisions that turned a startup into a $100 million company. Now it would be the room where that partnership ended. Naomi arrived at 5:05. She looked diminished somehow. The confidence that usually carried her into rooms had eroded. Her dark eyes were wary, her shoulders curved slightly inward. She knew why she was here. Penny. Her voice was careful, testing. Sit. Naomi sat across from her. The conference table stretched between them, 12 feet of mahogany that had once felt like shared territory. Now it was a barrier. He told me everything. Penny's voice was flat, the CFO delivering findings. Chicago. The night. All of it. Naomi's face went pale. Whatever composure she'd assembled crumbled. Penny, I don't want an apology. Penny cut her off. Apologies are easy. I want to understand. Understand what? Penny leaned forward, her dark eyes, bloodshot, exhausted but relentlessly focused, fixed on Naomi's face. Did you love him? Do you love him? The question hung in the air. The boardroom lights hummed. Outside the windows, Manhattan kept moving, indifferent to the small devastations happening in its glass towers. Naomi looked down at her hands, twisted them together, the gesture of someone who had run out of places to hide. Yes. The word fell like a stone into still water. I know I shouldn't. Naomi's voice was barely audible. I know it's wrong. I know it was wrong then and it's wrong now. But I never stopped. Penny absorbed this. Her expression didn't change. The CFO mask held. But something shifted behind her eyes. 3 years, she said. You've been in love with my husband for 3 years. Every dinner party, every board meeting, every time I invited you into my home. Yes. And he? Penny's voice cracked, just barely, just enough. Does he love you? Naomi looked up, met Penny's eyes for the first time since she'd sat down. And in that look was something unexpected. Grief. Not for herself, for Penny. No. The word came out rough. He loves you. He's always loved you. That night in Chicago. She stopped, drew a breath. That night was about loneliness, not love. He was drunk and I was broken and we crashed into each other because we were both empty. But for him, it meant nothing. I knew that the next morning. I knew it when he agreed to never speak of it again, and I knew it when he looked at me at every dinner party for 3 years like I was a wound he was trying to forget. It meant nothing to him. Her voice wavered. It meant everything to me. Penny sat with this, the cruelest truth of all. The affair that had devastated her was meaningless to her husband, a drunken collision he regretted before dawn, while Naomi had carried unrequited love like a stone in her chest for 3 years. And Penny's own affair, the one she'd confessed, the one she'd been crucifying herself for, had been the same. desperate reaching toward a stranger because she was lonely. Meaningless in every way except the meaning it took on when she told the truth. Neither affair meant what they thought. Neither changed what it destroyed. "I don't know what to say." Naomi's voice broke. "I'm sorry doesn't cover it. I know that. I helped build this company with you. I was supposed to be your partner, your friend." "You were." "And now?" Penny stood, gathered her bag, looked down at Naomi, this woman she had trusted, collaborated with, considered family. "Now I don't know what we are." Her voice was quiet, not angry, just tired. "I don't know if the company survives this. I don't know if I can sit across from you in meetings and not see him. I don't know anything anymore. But I'm glad you told me the truth about loving him." "Why?" "Because it helps me understand." Penny moved toward the door. "It helps me understand that none of this was simple, that everyone involved was broken in different ways, that I'm not the only victim, and neither are you." She paused at the threshold. "For what it's worth, Naomi, I'm sorry too. For whatever I did that made Graham so lonely, he reached for you." She left Naomi sitting in the boardroom where they'd built an empire, alone with her confession and her unrequited love and the ruins of a partnership that had meant everything. Penny told me about it that night. Not everything, she kept some of it private between her and Naomi, but she told me what mattered. That Naomi loved me, that I'd never loved her back, that the night in Chicago was emptier than I'd even realized, a collision of lonely people that meant nothing to me and everything to her. "Does that change anything?" I asked. Penny looked at me across our kitchen island, the same island where we'd had 100 breakfasts, 1,000 conversations, 12 years of the small moments that make up a marriage. "I don't know," she said. "It should make me angrier, shouldn't it? That you threw away everything for a night that meant nothing." "And does it?" "No." Her voice was barely a whisper. "It just makes it sadder." "Would you rather your partner's betrayal meant everything or nothing at all?" I didn't have an answer. Neither did she. Rain on windows, city muted. Two people with nothing left to hide. A week after Penny spoke to Naomi, we had the conversation we should have had years ago. It started the way most important conversations start, with alcohol and silence. Both of us in the living room, her with wine, me with whiskey. The first real drinks we'd shared since the night she confessed. The rain had been falling for hours. December in Manhattan, gray skies, wet streets, the city hunching its shoulders against the cold. The brownstone felt smaller somehow, more like a waiting room than a home. "When did we stop?" Penny asked. I looked at her. She was curled in the corner of the couch, legs tucked under her, wine glass cradled in both hands. The way she used to sit when we were younger, when everything felt possible. "Stop what?" "Being honest with each other." She stared into her wine. "Before Chicago, before my conference. When did we start performing instead of talking?" I took a drink, let the whiskey burn, thought about the question she was really asking. "I don't know exactly. Somewhere between year 5 and year 8. I set down the glass. When the ambition got louder than the love. She nodded slowly. "I remember year 5. I got the CFO offer from Brennan. I made partner. We celebrated." A ghost of a smile. "That restaurant in the village, the one that closed." "Antonio's." "Antonio's." She took a drink. We were so happy. We thought we'd arrived. We had, just not where we thought. The rain streaked down the windows. The brownstone settled around us. 12 years of accumulated life, every piece of furniture a decision we'd made together, every book on the shelf a shared discovery. I told myself we were building something, I said. The words came slowly, like they'd been waiting a long time to be spoken. The firm, the accounts, the reputation. I thought if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, you'd, I don't know, see me again. See you? The way you used to, before. I couldn't look at her. When we were young, before we started performing. Graham, her voice was soft, careful. I never stopped seeing you. I just stopped reaching. I told myself that work was partnership, that if I kept climbing, kept building, I was building us. But I wasn't. I was building an escape. From what? From feeling like I wasn't enough. The admission came out raw. From watching you disappear into clients and accounts and late nights at the office and not knowing how to ask if you still loved me. I never stopped loving you. I know. Her eyes were wet. That's the worst part. Neither of us stopped. We just forgot how to show each other. Autopsied. I reached across the couch, took her hand. She let me. For one moment, maybe 30 seconds, maybe less, we held on. The way we used to when we were scared of flights, or waiting for test results, or lying in the dark after funerals. Her fingers were cold. Mine were shaking. But we held on. Then she withdrew. I can't. Her voice cracked. I look at you and I see her. I look at myself and I see him. We're both ghosts now. Penny, I'm not angry. She wiped her eyes. I thought I would be. I thought finding out about you and Naomi would make me hate you, but it just clarified things. What things? That we broke this a long time ago. Before Chicago, before Singapore, before any of it. She set down her wine. The affairs weren't the disease. They were the symptom. And I don't know if we can cure what was already dying. I looked around the living room, at the art we'd bought on our honeymoon, at the books we'd read aloud in the early years, at the wedding photograph on the mantel, those young faces, those clasped hands, those impossible promises. What happens now? I asked. I don't know. She pulled her sweater tighter, closed herself off. But I think we need to decide soon. I can't keep living in this limbo, waiting to see if we're going to fight for it or let it go. And you? What do you want? She looked at me, really looked. And I saw in her eyes the same question I'd been carrying for weeks. Is there anything left to save? I don't know yet. But I think I'm starting to find out. Is it worse to end a marriage with hatred, or with the sad acknowledgement that love wasn't enough? We sat in silence for another hour, not touching, not speaking, just existing in the ruins of what we'd built. The rain kept falling. The clock kept ticking. And somewhere between midnight and dawn, I realized the marriage might already be over. We just hadn't signed the papers yet. 2 days before Marcus's deadline, I made my choice. I didn't tell Penny first. Didn't ask for permission or input or advice. This was something I had to do alone. Not for her, not for us, but for me.
for whatever remained of the man I used to believe I was. I arrived at Marcus's office at 8 a.m., before the trading floor came alive, before the junior partners arrived with their performance anxiety and their designer coffee, before the day began its relentless forward motion. He was already there. He was always already there. 60 years of early mornings and late nights, building something he was terrified of losing. "Graham." He looked up from his desk, assessed me with those shrewd blue eyes. "You look like a man who's made a decision." "I have." "About the Brennan account?" "Yes." I sat across from him, the same chair I'd sat in 100 times over 15 years, the same mahogany desk, the same view of Manhattan stretching to the horizon. "I need to resign it." Marcus set down his pen, removed his glasses, rubbed his eyes with a weariness I'd never seen before. "That's $500 million under management," he said. Not arguing, just stating facts. 4 decades of relationship with that family. The account that made you partner. I know. It's 40% of this firm's revenue. I know that too. Then tell me why. I looked out the window. At the city that had given me everything, and was about to take most of it back. At the glass and steel towers full of people managing other people's money, pretending their personal lives didn't bleed into their professional judgment. My wife is CFO of Brennan Dynamics. The words came out steady, clearer than I'd expected. The woman I had an affair with is COO. Every quarterly review, every client meeting, every portfolio discussion, they'll both be there, across the table, watching me perform the role of reliable advisor. I can't do it anymore, Marcus. I can't sit in those rooms and pretend Chicago never happened. I can't look at Naomi and see a colleague instead of a mistake. I can't look at Penny and pretend I'm still the man she trusted with her company's assets. Marcus was silent. I could see him calculating. The cost to the firm, the damage to client relationships, the precedent of a partner walking away from their biggest account. "This will hurt you," he said finally. "Professionally. Your name will be attached to the resignation. People will ask questions. Let them. Your income will drop. Significantly. I know. And it might not save your marriage." I nodded. That was the hardest truth of all. I was sacrificing the thing I could still control, my career, for the thing I probably couldn't save. But the alternative was worse. I can't manage their money and manage my conscience at the same time, I said. Every time I see Naomi's name on a report, I'll think of that night. Every time I advise Penny's company, I'll remember that I built 15 years of career on a lie. This will cost you everything. It already has. Marcus slid the documents across the desk. The account transfer. Formal. Final. I signed my name on the line that would end my biggest professional accomplishment. Watched the ink dry. "I'm sorry," Marcus said. And he meant it. I could hear it in his voice. "I'm sorry it came to this." Me too. He stood, walked to the window. The same window where he'd delivered his ultimatum weeks ago. "For what it's worth, Graham, I respect the decision. Not many men would give up $500 million to try to save something that might already be gone." It's not about saving anything. I stood too, left the paperwork on his desk. It's about not pretending anymore. I've done enough of that for 3 years. I walked to the door, paused with my hand on the handle.
The Brennans will want to know why. Tell them I made mistakes, personal ones, and I'm trying to do right by them, by not pretending I'm still the man they trusted. Marcus nodded slowly. I will. I walked out of his office for the last time as the primary advisor to the Brennan family fortune. The trading floor was coming to life now, junior partners arriving, phones beginning to ring, the machinery of wealth grinding forward. None of them knew what I'd just done. None of them would understand why. But I understood. For the first time in 3 years, I understood. What good is success if you can't look at yourself in the mirror? The Brennan account went to another partner that afternoon. My name came off the documentation. My biggest client, gone. And I felt lighter. Not happy, not relieved, just lighter. The lying was finally over. All of it. Even the professional kind. I came home that evening carrying nothing but the weight of what I'd done. Penny was in the kitchen. Coffee, again, or maybe wine. I couldn't tell from the doorway. She turned when she heard me, and I saw in her face the question she'd been asking for weeks. What now? I resigned the Brennan account. She set down whatever she was holding, crossed her arms. The CFO's posture, protective, assessing. Why? Because I can't keep pretending nothing happened. I leaned against the doorframe, exhausted, empty, honest. Every time I see Naomi's name on a report, I'll think of that night. Every time I advise your company, I'll remember I built my career on a lie. Graham, that was your biggest client. $500 million. Your entire... No, I cut her off, gently. No, it wasn't. What do you mean? I looked at her. At this woman I'd shared 12 years with. At the CFO, the wife, the person I'd betrayed and been betrayed by. At the woman who deserved the truth I should have given her 3 years ago. You were my biggest client, Penny. The words came out soft, final. The marriage, us. That was the account that mattered, and I failed it, years ago, long before I signed any paperwork today. Her face crumpled. Not anger, something else. Grief, maybe. Recognition. We both failed it, she said. Her voice cracked. I stopped reaching. You stopped showing up. We both... She couldn't finish. I crossed the kitchen, stopped in front of her. Close enough to touch, but not touching. Not yet. I don't know if we survive this, I said. I don't know if there's anything left to rebuild. But I know I can't keep performing. Not at work, not with you, not anymore. What does that mean? It means I'm done lying. To Marcus, to the Brennans, to you, to myself. I reached for her, let my hand rest on her arm. Whatever comes next, divorce, separation, some version of starting over, I want it to be real, even if real hurts more. She looked at my hand on her arm, then at my face, searching for something. Sincerity, maybe. Or the man she'd married, still visible beneath all the wreckage. Then she stepped forward, and for the first time in weeks, she held me. We stood in the kitchen of our brownstone, the house where we'd lied to each other for years, where we'd finally told the truth, where everything we'd built had collapsed into rubble. And we held each other, not as enemies, not as victims, as two people who had loved something once and watched it die. We both failed it, she whispered again, into my shoulder, barely audible. Yes, we did. I don't know how long we stood there. Long enough for the light to change. Long enough for the coffee to go cold. Long enough for something, not forgiveness, not yet, but something, to pass between us. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were wet. But she wasn't crying. Neither was I. "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know." The brownstone held us. 12 years of accumulated life. Photos on walls, art they'd bought together, the furniture where they'd fought and loved and lied and finally told the truth. For the first time, we weren't lying. We were just lost. Marcus called that night. I was on the couch. We both were, Penny and I, sitting on opposite ends but closer than we'd been in weeks. Some nature documentary on the TV, neither of us watching, just existing in the same space without pretense. The phone buzzed, his name on the screen. "Graham?" His voice was measured, professional. But something underneath. Curiosity, maybe. "The Brennans are asking questions. They want to know why you stepped back." "Tell them the truth." "Which truth?" I glanced at Penny. She was watching me now, listening. "Tell them I made mistakes, personal ones, and I'm trying to do right by them, by not pretending I'm still the man they trusted." Silence on the other end. Then, "They'll respect that more than an excuse." "Maybe." "Graham," Marcus hesitated. Then, "I'm sorry. For what it's worth. I've known you 15 years, watched you build something real here. I'm sorry it's ending like this." "It's not ending, Marcus. Not the firm. Just my part in the Brennan account." "I hope you're right. I hope something survives." "Me too." I set down the phone, looked at Penny. "He took it well?" "Well enough." She nodded, turned back to the documentary, reached across the couch cushion. She didn't take my hand, but she didn't pull away either. It was the closest thing to progress we'd had in weeks. Rain ended, the quiet after everything. That night, for the first time since her confession, I didn't sleep on the couch. I slept in the guest room. Not our bedroom, we weren't ready for that, maybe wouldn't ever be. But not the couch either. Somewhere in between. Progress. Or the beginning of an ending. I couldn't tell which. The next morning, Penny suggested we talk to lawyers. Not to file immediately, just to understand our options. What divorce would look like. What staying together would require. The financial architecture of ending, or continuing, a 12-year marriage. It wasn't romantic. But it was honest. And honest was all we had left. We stood there in the house we built together. The house where we'd lied to each other for years. And for the first time, we weren't lying. We were just lost. But at least we were lost together. For now. Subscribe now to see if Graham and Penny can survive mutual betrayal. And discover in our next tale what happens when a secret child demands her stolen inheritance at Christmas. Coffee brewing, the sounds of a life still running on familiar tracks.
Yes,
One
I think we
week
do.
after we held each other in the kitchen. 7 days of sleeping in separate rooms. 7 mornings of careful choreography. Who showers first, who makes coffee. How to exist in the same space without touching. 7 nights of lying awake, asking the same question. What do we do now? The brownstone felt different. Emptier, somehow, even with both of us in it. The furniture was the same, the art on the walls, the books on the shelves. But something essential had been removed, some invisible architecture that had held everything together. We'd stopped pretending, and without the pretense, we could finally see how hollow the structure had become. She found me at the kitchen island, the same island where we'd had 100 difficult conversations over 12 years. But this one felt different. Final. "I've been thinking," Penny said. She stood across from me, coffee cup cradled in both hands. Her dark hair was loose, her face bare of makeup. She looked tired, honest, beautiful in a way I'd stopped noticing years ago. About us, about what we could rebuild. And? She set down her cup, met my eyes with the direct gaze I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. The one that saw through presentations and proposals and all the careful performances people construct. I don't think I can. The words landed. I felt them settle into the quiet of the kitchen, joining all the other truths we'd finally started telling. Not because I don't forgive you, she continued. I do. For Chicago, for the hiding, for all of it. Then why? Because every time I look at you, I see her. Her voice was steady, not angry, just clear. Every time you look at me, you see him. We've become mirrors of each other's worst moments, and I don't know how to unsee that. I nodded slowly, because I'd been thinking the same thing. I've been thinking too, I said, about what staying would mean. And? We could try. Years of therapy, working through it, fighting for every inch of ground we've lost. I looked at my hands, the wedding ring still there, still catching light. Maybe in 5 years we'd be okay. Maybe we'd find our way back to something real. Or we'd be two people who stayed together because leaving felt like losing. I met her eyes. Performing a marriage because we were too afraid to admit it was over. Is staying together winning? The question hung between us. The coffee grew cold. The winter light shifted through the windows. I don't think so, I said finally. Not anymore. Two people arriving at the same conclusion. She crossed to my side of the island, stood close, not touching, but present. The way she used to stand when we were young and everything was possible. I loved you, she said. I still love you, in some way I can't quite name. But I can't be married to you anymore. I know. My voice cracked, just barely. I feel the same. Is this it, then? The end? I thought about all the endings I'd imagined over the past weeks, the screaming matches that never came, the thrown objects that stayed on shelves, the lawyers wielded like weapons. This was none of that. This was just two people telling the truth, quietly, in a kitchen where they'd shared 1,000 breakfasts. I think so, I said. I think this is the only honest ending we have. She reached for my hand. I let her take it. We stood there for a long time, not as husband and wife, not as enemies, just as two people who had loved each other, failed each other, and finally, stopped pretending. Is it braver to fight for something broken, or to let it go with dignity? We chose dignity, that morning, in the kitchen. It didn't feel like winning. It didn't feel like losing either. It just felt true. The real estate agent arrived on a Tuesday. Her name was something forgettable, Catherine or Caroline or one of those Upper East Side names that blend together. She wore Chanel and carried a leather portfolio and moved through our brownstone like a surgeon examining a patient before an operation. Beautiful home. She measured the living room windows with her eyes. Pre-war details, original moldings. You'll get asking price, minimum. Penny and I stood in the doorway, watching her catalog our life. She took photos, made notes, commented on the light exposure, the ceiling height, the garden access we'd never used because we were always working. She didn't see 12 years of marriage. She saw square footage and potential, and the commission she'd earn when we signed the papers. That's the machinery of ending. Someone comes to measure what you built, and all they see is the structure. After she left, Penny sat on the couch, the same couch where she'd confessed to me, where I'd sat frozen and unable to respond because I was hiding my own secret. The same couch where everything began to end. 12 years, she said. Her voice was distant. Not sad, just factual. Reduced to square footage and crown moldings. I leaned against the doorframe, looked around the living room we'd designed together, the art we'd argued about, the furniture we'd saved for, the shelves holding books we'd read aloud in the early years when we still had time for that kind of intimacy. "This is where I proposed," I said. Penny looked up. "What?" "Right there." I pointed to the spot by the fireplace. "I couldn't afford a ring yet, so I gave you my grandmother's." Her hand went to her finger. The ring was still there, platinum band, small diamond, elegant in its simplicity. She'd worn it for 12 years. "I remember," she said softly. "You were so nervous you knocked over the wine." Red wine, on the white rug. "It never came out." "No." I allowed myself a small smile. "It never did." Just the brownstone settling, holding memories. She touched the ring, twisted it gently the way she always did when she was thinking. "I'd say yes again," she said. I looked at her. "What?" "If you ask me today, right now, knowing everything that would happen, Chicago, the affairs, all of it," she met my eyes. "I'd say yes again." "Would you?" She stood, crossed to where I was standing, close enough that I could smell her perfume, the same one she'd worn on our first date, the one I'd bought her every birthday because I knew it was her favorite. "Because the beginning was real," she said. "Remember? That restaurant in the village where we had our first fight, and you apologized with flowers you couldn't afford? The apartment in Brooklyn with the broken radiator? The way you used to read me poetry in bed before you decided you were too busy to be romantic?" "I remember. The beginning was real, Graham. And the middle was real. It's just the ending we got wrong." I felt something shift in my chest. Some knot that had been tightening for weeks, finally beginning to loosen. "I'd say yes, too," I said. "If you asked me." She smiled. Sad, but real. The first real smile I'd seen from her in weeks. "Then I guess we got that part right, at least." "Would you choose the same love again, knowing how it ends?" "I would. I'd choose her, even knowing what it would cost us. Some things are worth having, even when you can't keep them." Brennan Dynamics office, late afternoon, building, quieting, the hum of an empire winding down for the day. Penny told me about Naomi's resignation later. She described it in fragments, the way you describe something you're still processing. The words came out of order, circling back, filling in details. But I could see it clearly. Could picture the boardroom where two women who had built something together were saying goodbye. Boardroom door closing, 2 sets of footsteps. The resignation letter lay on the conference table. 1 page, neat, final. Naomi stood by the windows, looking out at the Manhattan skyline she'd helped conquer. Her posture was smaller than usual, shoulders curved inward, the confidence that had carried her through 1,000 negotiations temporarily absent. "You don't have to leave," Penny said. "The company needs you." Naomi turned. Her dark eyes were red-rimmed but dry. She'd done her crying already, somewhere private. "The company will survive." Her voice was steady, practiced. "But I can't be in rooms with you and pretend we're just colleagues. Not after what I did." "What we did." Penny crossed her arms. Not defensive, just holding herself together. "All three of us. You didn't destroy my marriage, Naomi. Penny, it was already dying. You just revealed the cracks." She moved to the table, picked up the resignation letter, read it once, though she'd already read it before this meeting. "Graham and I stopped being partners years before you and I started building this company. The affair didn't break us. We were already broken." Naomi's composure finally cracked, just slightly, just enough that Penny could see the grief underneath. "I never meant to love him," she said. Her voice was barely audible. "That night in Chicago, I was lonely and drunk and my marriage was falling apart. I didn't expect it to become what it became." "I know. I told myself it would fade, that I'd get over it. But every time I saw him, every dinner party, every quarterly review—" She stopped, drew a breath. "I couldn't make it stop." "That's almost worse," Penny said. "What?" "If you'd seduced him deliberately, if it had been a calculated betrayal, I could hate you." Penny set down the letter. "But you just loved him. Against your will, against your better judgment, and he didn't love you back. And somehow that makes everything sadder." Naomi's tears finally fell, silent, streaming down her face without sound. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I know you are." Penny looked around the boardroom, the table where they'd closed their first major acquisition. The whiteboard still showing notes from last week's strategy session. The view that represented everything they'd built together. "I'm going to miss you," she said. Not the CFO speaking, the friend. Naomi wiped her eyes, managed a broken smile. "I'm going to miss you too." "Where will you go?" "I don't know yet. Maybe San Francisco. Maybe somewhere new." She straightened, put her shoulders back, tried to find the woman she'd been before Chicago. "Somewhere I can start over. Somewhere I'm not reminded of what I did every time I walk into a room." "That sounds lonely." "Maybe." She picked up her bag. The last of her personal items had already been packed. "But it's better than staying and pretending. I've done enough pretending for one lifetime." She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. "For what it's worth," Naomi said without turning, "he loves you. He always loved you. What happened between us, it was empty for him, meaningless. You were never competing with me, Penny. You never had to." "I know." Penny's voice was quiet. "That doesn't make it hurt less." "No, I suppose it doesn't." She left. The door clicked shut. Penny stood alone in the boardroom where she'd built an empire with a woman who had loved her husband for 3 years. Penny came home that evening, looking emptier than I'd seen her. "She's gone," she said, setting down her bag, not looking at me. "She resigned, effectively immediately." I heard. "The board will find a replacement. Operations will continue. The company will survive." "And you?" She looked at me then. Her dark eyes were dry, but something behind them had shifted, hollowed out in a way I recognized. "I lost a friend today, Graham. Not just a business partner, a friend. Someone I trusted. Someone I built something with." "I know. The affair took my marriage, but it also took that." She sat heavily on the couch. "I didn't expect that loss. I didn't prepare for it. Which loss is worse, the one you saw coming, or the collateral damage you never anticipated?" The affairs didn't just end our marriage. They ended a partnership, a friendship, a decade of trust. They rippled outward, touching everyone we knew. That's the cost no one tells you about. Betrayal doesn't stay contained. It spreads. The brownstone was nearly empty now. 3 days before the final signing, boxes stacked against walls, furniture tagged for the movers. The accumulated life of 12 years reduced to numbered labels and packing tape. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, haunting my own past. The living room where I'd proposed, now just bare floors and marks on the walls where pictures used to hang. The kitchen, where we'd had 1,000 breakfasts, where she'd confessed, where I'd confessed, where we'd finally held each other. Now stripped down to stainless steel and marble. The study. My study. The room where I'd hidden everything. The locked drawer was open now. Empty. Nothing left to hide. I found the wedding album in a closet I hadn't opened in years. Tucked behind old coats and boxes of tax documents, leather-bound and dusty. The cover was embossed with our names and the date. Graham and Penelope, June 15th, 2012. I sat on the floor, back against the wall. Afternoon light slanting through bare windows, and I opened the album. Young faces looked back at me. There I was, 32. Dark hair without a single thread of gray, eyes bright with certainty. The certainty of a man who believed he knew exactly who he was and who he would become. And there was Penny, 30, radiant in white. Looking at me, not the camera. Her expression holding something I hadn't seen in years. Complete trust. We looked so sure, so certain that love was enough, that the promises we were making would carry us through anything. We had no idea. I turned the pages, the reception, the first dance, the cake cutting she'd insisted on even though we both thought it was cheesy, the toasts from friends whose names I could barely remember now. And then, a photograph I'd forgotten was there. My parents. My mother, smiling, my father's arm around her. They looked happy in the photograph, the kind of happy that only exists in frozen moments before time reveals the truth. 3 years after that picture was taken, I came home from school to find my mother crying at the kitchen table. She didn't hear me come in. She was sitting at the kitchen table, head in her hands, shoulders shaking with sobs she was trying to suppress. "Mom?" She looked up. Her face was red, mascara streaked. She tried to wipe her eyes, to compose herself, but it was too late. I'd seen. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Just a hard day." But I knew. I'd seen the signs before. The late nights he worked, the phone calls he took in the other room, the way she watched him when she thought no one was looking. "He did it again?" Not a question, a statement. She didn't answer, didn't have to. "He promised it was over," I said. "He swore." "I know," her voice cracked. "I know what he promised." I stood in that kitchen, 16 years old, watching my mother's heart break for the 3rd time, and I made a vow. I would never be that man. I would never do to someone I loved what he was doing to her. I would never become my father. I sat on the floor of the empty brownstone, staring at my father's face in the wedding album. His arm around my mother, his smile that promised everything and delivered nothing. I became him anyway. 3 years ago, in a hotel room in Chicago, I made the same choice he made. Different woman, different city, same betrayal, same broken promise. I traced his face with my finger, the man I'd spent my life trying not to become. But there was a difference, one difference. My father stayed. He kept hurting her for years, affair after affair, promise after promise, breaking her heart over and over because leaving felt like admitting failure. I was choosing to go. Not because I didn't love Penny. I did. I still do. But because loving someone means not making them stay in a marriage that's become a monument to your worst choices. My father held on until there was nothing left to hold. He couldn't let go. I could. I closed the album, looked at the cover one last time. Graham and Penelope, June 15th, 2012. I should leave it. For the movers, for the next family. Let the past stay in the past. I stood, walked to the door. Stopped, walked back. Picked up the album, tucked it under my arm. Can you become the man you swore you'd never be, and still choose differently than he did? Some things you can't leave behind. Some memories you have to carry, even when they hurt. Because they're part of who you were, who you are, who you're choosing to become. The neutral aesthetic of legal dissolution. The lawyer's office was designed to feel like nothing. Neutral colors, clean lines, abstract art that meant nothing in particular. A conference table that had witnessed 100 endings just like ours. The careful choreography of marriages dissolving into paperwork. I arrived first, sat on one side of the table. My attorney beside me, a woman named Margaret who'd been handling my business contracts for years and had agreed to this because I asked, not because she specialized in family law. The papers were already laid out, stacks of documents flagged with colored tabs. Sign here, initial here. The reduction of 12 years to a series of signatures. Penny arrived with her attorney, a man I didn't recognize, probably recommended by someone at Brennan Dynamics. She wore the charcoal blazer I'd always liked. Her hair was pulled back, professional, composed. But her eyes, when they met mine across the table, held something the attorneys couldn't see. Something that looked like grief and gratitude and goodbye all at once. Shall we begin? Margaret's voice, neutral, professional. We began. The attorneys explained each document. Division of assets, the brownstone sale, separate retirement accounts. No children to complicate custody, no pets to argue over. Just the clean dissolution of a union that had stopped being a partnership years before the lawyers got involved. I signed where they pointed. Penny signed where they pointed. Our hands moved across identical documents, creating the paper trail of our failure. And then, the final document, the petition itself. Margaret slid it in front of me. Penny's attorney slid the matching copy in front of her. Once you both sign this, Margaret said, the petition is filed. 90-day waiting period. Then it's final. Penny picked up her pen, held it above the signature line. Then she looked at me. I don't regret telling you. Her voice was quiet, not for the lawyers, for me. Even now, after everything it cost, I don't regret being honest. I know. My voice came out rough. Honest. That's the problem. She almost smiled. Almost. Just the corner of her mouth, a flicker of the humor we used to share. Why is that a problem? Because if you regretted it, if you wished you'd kept the secret, I could tell myself the confession was the mistake. That we'd still be married if you'd just stayed silent. I set down my pen, met her eyes. But you don't regret it. And neither do I. Which means the confession wasn't what broke us. We were already broken. The truth just finally showed us. She nodded slowly, understanding. I'm glad we can see that clearly now, she said, even if it took losing everything to get here. She sighed. I watched her hand move across the page, the pen that ended 12 years. My turn. I picked up the pen, looked at the line where my name would go, the line that would make it official, make it real, make it irreversible. I regret not telling you first, I said. Not to the lawyers, not even to her attorney, just to her. I regret letting you carry all the guilt while I hid mine. I regret becoming the man I swore I'd never be. But I don't regret loving you. I looked at her, really looked. I just regret how badly I did it. I signed. The attorneys collected the papers, made their copies, said something about next steps and filing procedures that I didn't hear. It was done. 12 years of marriage. 12 years of love and failure and secrets and truth. Reduced to signatures on a conference table. The attorneys left first, giving us a moment. Professional courtesy. Penny and I stood on opposite sides of the table. The paper's gone now, nothing between us but air. What happens now? She asked. I don't know. We move on, I guess. Find new apartments, start new routines, become the people we're supposed to be without each other. That sounds lonely. Maybe. I allowed myself a small smile. Sad, but real. But it's honest, and honest is all I have left to give you. She crossed to my side of the table, stood close, closer than she'd stood in weeks. Thank you for finally telling me the truth, even if it was too late. Was it too late? Or was it exactly when we needed to hear it? She didn't answer, didn't need to. She kissed my cheek, brief, tender, goodbye. And then she walked out. I stood alone in the conference room, the neutral walls, the abstract art, the table that had witnessed our ending. Is honesty worth it if it destroys everything you were trying to save? I don't know. I'm not sure I'll ever know. But I know I'd rather end it with the truth than continue with a lie. Most days, anyway. 3 days after the signing, the movers came that morning, took the last of the furniture, took the boxes we'd labeled, and the things we couldn't decide who owned. Took 12 years of accumulated life and loaded it into a truck that would split at a storage facility. Her things going one direction, mine going another. I came back one last time, to walk through the empty rooms, to say goodbye. The foyer looked smaller without furniture. The walls showed marks where pictures had hung, rectangles of brighter paint, ghosts of memories removed. I walked into the living room, the proposal spot. The fireplace where I'd knelt and given her my grandmother's ring because I couldn't afford one of my own. The window where we'd watched our first Manhattan snowfall, pressed together, young and certain. Empty now, just afternoon light on hardwood, dust motes floating in slanted sun. The kitchen. The island where we'd had 1,000 breakfasts, where she'd confessed, where I'd confessed, where we'd finally held each other, not as husband and wife, but as two people who'd run out of lies. The study, the room where I'd hidden everything, the desk with the locked drawer, empty now, no secrets left to keep. The window where I'd stared at the city for hours, carrying a guilt I couldn't speak. The bedroom. I stopped at the door. Couldn't go in. Some rooms hold too much. The bed where we'd made love and stopped making love. The closets where her clothes used to hang. The bathroom where she'd cried after her confession, thinking I didn't hear. I turned away, left that door closed. On the kitchen counter, where I'd left it for the movers, the wedding album still sat. They hadn't taken it. Maybe they didn't know it was meant to go. Maybe they thought it was too personal. I picked it up, felt the weight of it. 12 years of photographs. Young faces, impossible promises. Some things you can't leave behind. I tucked the album under my arm, walked to the front door, took one last look at the empty brownstone, the home we'd built, the life we'd shared, the cage we'd constructed without knowing it, and finally escaped, though not together. I stepped outside, pulled the door closed behind me. The key turned in the lock. Another kind of hotel key. That's what I thought, standing there on the brownstone steps. The hotel key in Chicago that had opened a door to a room where I destroyed my marriage. The brownstone key that was closing the door on everything I'd built. Keys that open, keys that close. All of them marking the moments you can't take back. I walked down the steps. The afternoon sun fell across the street. Manhattan in December. Cold air, crowds moving, the eternal rhythm of a city that doesn't care about any individual's private devastation. I walked into it. Just another man in a suit carrying something from his past. Just another face in the crowd. Just another person who'd loved and lost and finally stopped lying. The brownstone steps fell away behind me. The house where we'd lived, now empty, now sold, now someone else's story. I didn't look back. Some doors, once closed, should stay closed. Would you take back every choice that led you here, if it meant never having loved at all? No. The beginning was real. The love was real. It's just the ending that broke. And I have to carry that. The album under my arm, the ring still on my finger until I'm ready to remove it. The truth I finally told. Carry it forward into whatever comes next. The album. I used to believe that the truth would set me free. That confession was courage. That honesty was the foundation everything good gets built on. I still believe that. Mostly. But here's what no one tells you. The truth doesn't care about your marriage. It doesn't care about the life you built or the promises you made. The truth just is. And once you let it out, you can't put it back. Penny and I told each other everything. Finally, after years of performing, we were honest about the affairs, about the years of neglect, about the slow death we'd been pretending not to notice. And the honesty worked. We understood each other better than we ever had. We saw each other clearly, maybe for the first time. We just couldn't stay married after. So was it worth it? Telling the truth? I don't know. I'm not sure I'll ever know. But I know this. I'd rather be alone with the truth than together with a lie. Most days, anyway. This is American Billionaire Tales, where fortune meets fate. I'm Michael, and sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is tell the truth, knowing it won't save you. Next time, a woman discovers she was never supposed to exist. A secret child, a stolen inheritance, and a Christmas that will expose 40 years of lies. Some families are built on love. Others are built on secrets. She's about to learn which kind hers is.